You're trying to do a stock
doing the Wolf of Wall Street thing?
Wolf of Wall Street.
I was gonna go for it, but I kind of like half committed, and then I was like, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah.
I haven't watched a movie in so long, I can't even remember what they do.
What do you do?
They do he's like,
Yeah.
You know, when he sat down having breakfast with the guy, and he's
they're at the really fancy restaurant.
Yeah, coked out psychopath, just fucking strumming to his chest because he gets paid $1 million a year. Anyway, welcome to Plat Chat VALORANT episode 30.
Yeah, Bren's been investing in GME, and now he thinks he's a Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh, I thought the tie-in was that Avast, with his hair tie, he looks like a stockbroker.
He does look a bit like
I thought that was going to be the tie-in.
This is the same hair I have every episode. It's the same hair. The hair hasn't changed. I don't know why we're now focused on the hair. The hair is the exact same. Not sure what's happened here. The more impressive part is that we started an hour earlier today to discuss the topics, and then we were still late to start the episode. We were still late, and we started an hour earlier. That's the impressive part.
Yeah,
But no, let's talk about the hair.
That's quite astounding.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, Plat Chat VALORANT. What was I supposed to do? Oh yeah, fucking subscribe to our channel. So a lot of you that aren't subscribed still. We got some content coming up. Back chat with Sliggy's coming. Make sure you subscribe as well because you don't want to miss that one. When are we posting that one?
That's on Wednesday.
When are we recording it?
Like in 3 hours.
Today?
Yeah, today. Incredible, isn't it?
And we're doing a lot today.
We're doing a lot today, yeah.
And team previews.
Oh yeah, our Monday's packed full of Plat Chat.
Fucking hell. Okay. Well, let's get on with it, I guess. First topic. 100 Thieves. TSM losing in the qualifiers. Two upsets. Two big qualifier upsets here for the Valorant Challenger Tour, Valorant Champion Tour. Yeah. Valorant Champion Tour, VCT, but it's actually called Challengers for the first one that leads into the Masters, which will eventually lead into the Champions.
Yeah, but there's no Masters the first time, so the Challengers just leads into the Challengers final.
But Challengers 1 just leads into the Challengers.
Well, Challengers 1 leads into Challengers 2. Challengers 2 leads into the Challengers final.
But the Challengers 1 final that we just watched this weekend was just for seeding. It didn't lead into Challengers 2. That's next weekend.
That's
that leads
for next
weekend. If you watch that, you're never getting your time back. And what you were
have to
viewing
remember the whole
didn't
format for
ultimately
Europe
matter.
Challengers is way different than the other Challenger events that we're going to be watching.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so what we're getting at is
big upset.
What the fuck are you doing, Riot, with the format? Like it's all over the place.
It's a little all over the place, but it's acceptable.
It is. I'll tell you what. I mean, it's better than what we've had in the past.
It definitely is.
Way
it definitely
better
is
than
an
what we've had in the
improvement.
past.
It's slow improvements over time, which I'm a fan of.
And
yeah,
the Challengers 2 and 3 qualifiers will be all important. It'll be all.
The thing is, though, as well, these were important games.
These were important, yes.
Like, the fact that 100 Thieves and TSM lost, they didn't lose some seeding game. They lost to, I mean, you could argue tier 2 teams when it comes to the 100 Thieves result. Obviously, Exet is a genuine tier 2 team, but
yeah, I mean, like, Exet's definitely not.
Carpe knocked him tier 3, tier 4.
Kurt, go to the Carpe knocked them. I mean, I don't want to just be sitting there. They're not even like just railing on it.
That is by far the most shocking loss is 100 Thieves. TSM I could see because Exet's actually been on a tear recently. They've been looking pretty good. Like I could see Exet, but Carpe Nocturne.
I mean, you can look at. I mean, they played Beast Coast, Dignitas, Built by Gamers, Andbox, Luminosity. They have not taken a map off any of them. Yeah, all the teams they have beaten are kind of random.
They got
smoked by NRG.
Yeah, 13-5, 13-2, I think was the scoreline against NRG.
I actually watched this team play against Built by Gamers from their POV because one of their players was streaming that match. And yeah, I mean, they're just, you know, they seem like a fine team, but they're just not at that level.
Yeah,
right? I mean, they're a fine tier 3 burgeoning into tier 2 team. So,
this is the biggest upset.
Are you now ready to join my thought process?
Okay, what is yours?
That Nitro is an important, very important piece of this team.
When was anyone ever
saying
been downplaying
it? When did we ever say the opposite to that?
You've all been downplaying it.
You said Nitro was the most important.
No, I said he was the most underrated. I think he's a pretty integral part of this team. I've always thought it.
I think every single player is an important... Well, actually, maybe you could argue that Dicey is the least, but every single player is an important part of 100 Thieves, I think. Yeah.
Bren's sitting here
You
vindicated.
reap what you sow.
We haven't reaped anything.
Find me a quote where I said Nitro was bad, not an integral part of the team, was anything where I was underselling Nitro. I don't believe I have.
What I remember was you arguing that Nitro had one of the best 2020s. Was a top 5 player with a best.
I threw his
2020.
name out there and immediately rescinded it
Like a boomerang.
because I realized he hasn't actually played a lot of 2020. But then I piggybacked off that conversation by saying that I think Nitro is pretty undervalued in 100 Thieves. When people talk 100 Thieves, they talk about Hiko, they talk about Steel, they talk about Asuna.
Yes. Yeah.
And Nitro kind of just falls to the wayside in a lot of those discussions. But I've always thought that he's been pretty important for his team's growth and success. And I think this is a prime example.
And he provides a lot in terms of his calling that I imagine was lost in that game as well. But still, here's the thing, right? This individual data point of them losing this game doesn't actually matter right now. And there's not a lot to take from it because not only was it not streamed, but it was one game where they didn't have Nitro. So we will either see in the future when there's more points of data, whether or not this was the beginning of a trend or if it is just this was just a one-off because they didn't have Nitro.
And honestly, because of the way that this format works, where the Challengers 1 series, the Challengers 1 tournament feeds into Challengers 2. So essentially, if you finish top 4, you skip the qualification process for Challengers 2, which eventually then feeds into the Challengers final, which then can feed into Masters. A little bit complicated, I know. You might need a PhD, but bear with me. In terms of this first tournament, it's not a huge deal. Like, they just essentially have to now go through the Challengers 2 format. Presumably, Nitro will be playing with them by that point.
Yeah.
I know some people were like, oh, you should just take the paternal leave off, right? But generally speaking, in esports and sports, you find that people don't take breaks.
Yeah, they return to work.
They're just going to be jumping straight back into competition.
And that's what they said, actually. Was it Hiko or was it Steel? I can't remember. One of their teammates said on stream that Nitro would be returning back very shortly back to competition after his child was born. And to me, when I look at this result as well, it's a little concerning, but I saw people being like genuinely worried and like, this is appalling. Even with Nitro out, you should never be losing to this kind of team. Those kind of things are reasonable, but you can't extrapolate from this data point whatsoever. You just can't. There's no way of knowing if this is going to repeat itself at any point in the future. It's so different to any result that they've had at any point. It's not like there was downwards trend for 100 Thieves. They looked, if anything, like they were on the upwards trajectory, and then they've brought in a totally different player. They were splitting time with Silex, right, in scrims. They were still scrimming with Nitro and the lead up to this as well. Nitro's their mid-round caller. From talking to their coach, Frost says that Steel sets up a lot of the plans, and he has veto power during the round, but it's mostly Nitro calling the mid-round decisions, which, I mean, that's a big thing to lack. That's way more responsibility on Steel to then make those calls. And Silex is not going to be kind of integrated into the team as well.
I do feel like there's some truth with both, though. I am both not concerned because it is just this one thing.
Bold stance. Bold stance, Wyatt.
But I do think that there is... But I do agree, this is not a team they should be losing to. I don't care who the fifth was.
They're not on the radar.
They could have had me in the server, man. They should probably still be winning. It's a little... I think this is still not a good result. They still have Steel, Hiko, Dicey, and Asuna.
Yeah.
And people are... I've definitely seen some people railing way too hard on that being all Silenx's fault, which is really foolish because realistically, I think the other 4 players have more than enough skill to be beating a team like this in a BO3 as well.
Yes, that's the other part about this.
BO3.
That is
a BO3.
Because at the same time as this match was, well, not this one that we're showing, we can't show the 100 Thieves game against Carpe Noctem because it wasn't even streamed.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that NSG is just using the labor of the masses as part of a caster challenge in order to broadcast all of the games, which not going to get onto that today, but I would love to make a video about it at some point. But as their game against Campaign Octane was going on, Sentinels were playing against Serenity, I want to say, and they lost the first map there. And people in my chat were like, oh my God, 100 Thieves and Sentinels are going to go out right at the beginning. And then Sentinels pull it back because it's a BO3, and 100 Thieves don't. And they lost both, like 13-11 or 13-10 or something. And it's concerning but not worrying to me.
Like, not even taking a map, I think, is the biggest issue, right? If they had taken a map and then the score, because the score lines were close. The score lines were pretty close. Like, it wasn't a blowout, but not even taking a map, especially on a map that they've been historically strong on, is concerning. With only being down one player out of their squad. You know, that's pretty, especially versus a team that has not even taken any series off of any tier 2 teams. That's the rough part here. But whatever, right?
Was this the result that spurred the Valorant Esports' random circle jerk that's been going around?
It's all of these.
There's a lot of stuff.
It's TSM losing. It's all of the upsets from this. I mean, but
the TSM losing, that shouldn't even be part of the conversation, in my opinion. That's like they lost to Exit, which is a team that's realistically working to like the tier 1.5 level of like a squad.
Yeah,
they're looking good. Like that's I feel like that's a useless data point. I feel in terms of like this.
I think though that this is actually more relevant to the discussion, generally speaking, of like, is Valorant more random at the pro level? Because what people are normally meaning is that all of the tier 2 teams just seem to take matches off each other all the time, and it seems very hard to tell who's going to win on any given day. And this is, I think, one of those kind of data points that fits. Like, the Campaign Octane beating 100 Thieves is so out there as a result that no one would have possibly expected, and no one expects realistically to happen again. That it doesn't, I mean, what are you bothering trying to draw patterns about the entirety of Valorant from that game for?
Right.
Like, that's nonsense. But a result like this is somewhat interesting, I think, because it shows there is volatility within the scene. Like, upset results can definitely happen to a higher degree than in CS, I would say. Not that that's, I mean, I don't personally think that's a bad
But also,
thing.
we're early into the game's life cycle, right? I remember early in Overwatch, like, there was definitely teams that were dominant, like, it stratified a bit, but teams would just, like, good teams, like, tier 1 teams would just lose to like, a miso spoon, and you know, to randomly, like, you know, like, it would have, like, I think we're so early into the game's life cycle, and we're bringing in so much. Also, what's even more different from that situation is that, like, we're bringing in so many players from like CS that have such a strong fundamental background in tac shooters to begin with, that like this overall skill level, I think early on to the game, obviously everyone's still evolving, is just so much different than even other examples, right? Like there's such a wildly varying amount and like so much skill separated versus like condensed into singular teams at this point, that I think that this should be kind of an expected result of where because of how early the scene is, right? If 2-3 years from now or something, randomly TSM, which has won the, you know, 3 Masters events in a row or whatever, right? Like they just won like 3 international events in a row, and then they lose to Billy Bob and crew in some random online event, and that's like in a BO5, that's a problem. That would be an issue potentially, and if that's something that happens often, but I don't think
that's also online events. That's the other thing that people I think are not really factoring in here, is that online CSGO is also incredibly volatile.
Yeah,
like
it has been all year,
and it has been since the dawn of CS. Like online CS is nowhere near as rigorous in terms of producing results that are reliable than LAN events are. And we've never seen LAN in Valorant. I mean, we have for like the Brazilian First Strike, but
yeah, that is a great point, because hypothetically, if you put TSM versus XSET on LAN right now, TSM, tenured team, all of the players have played on stages before in front of crowds, versus XSET, Wifo has in Fortnite, and then I don't know, the other 4 guys are all younger, upcoming kids. Like that there is a real difference there. But yeah, I agree. I think that result with XSET, that is just representative of something that happens in every early esport, where eventually there are teams that are just grinding hard and they overcome theoretically a better team or a team that has just been at the top longer. Exeter are just one of the teams that have been busting their asses with the same roster for like 5 months almost now, 4 months. They've just been playing every tournament. They've been grinding hard. And then they made one roster swap to bring in BCJ, who's just another really, really solid new player. And he's taken that team kind of over the top. And now I think that they're just in the top echelon.
I want to go back to the game itself for a moment as well, to just analyze whether or not this is even a reasonable thing to extrapolate from. TSM's compositions were kind of wild in that game too. This wasn't a TSM running comps that we know they're excellent at. This isn't TSM fresh off the back of an incredible first strike result where they're running their triple duelist and then going straight into the next tournament. This is them after a break trying something new, losing to Xset 2-1. We didn't get to see Bind because it wasn't on broadcast at all. Icebox, they crushed them 13-3, and TSM looked like easily the best team in North America on Icebox from the limited amount that we've seen so far. And then the final map, Kurt, can you pull it up again? I think it was Split.
It was Split,
and they were running. They're running the Sky.
They ran a lot of Sky, way more Sky than we've ever seen from TSM. Right? I think this is the most Sky we've ever seen from them.
It was definitely the most.
And they lost with it on Bind, and then they lost 13-5 here as well.
The game was mad. Look at the comeback. Just look at the round.
Yeah, it was pretty insane. Like I said, I'm going to be real with you.
They were up 9-3. Well, one of the big factors as well was BCJ at the end of the first half had like 2 kills or something.
It was
like
1 in 10 and went to 27.
Yeah, 19. I mean he was, especially it all came at the very end as well. Once it was around like both teams in that 10 to 12 range, he just started getting like 4Ks every round.
But also, TSM are running Phoenix on Split. Drone got almost 0 value when it came to the attacking half, even though he finishes with like a decent KD. He didn't do anything for the team on attack. They didn't have a great plan of what they wanted to do on attack. This wasn't TSM playing great and they just lost to some RNG factor. They didn't look like they'd figured out Split at all. Now, maybe if we'd seen Bind, we might have a different opinion on the match itself, because Bind is also another really important factor. They were running a different comp and they lost. What happened there? I don't know. We didn't get to see it. It wasn't on broadcast. But when you look at the 2 maps that we actually played, one TSM looked really good at, and one TSM didn't really have a plan, and it was a great comeback from Exit. I think that using this as a data point for like randomness is not valid. Like it's TSM's classic volatility.
Exit were just they were very unique on their defense as well. What they were doing, their defensive setups were not commonly seen. They had a lot of original setups and tactics. The way they were like quad mollying onto.
We did. Viper was fantastic on the defense.
Yeah, they were pulling out some new things that they have been developing. It seems like, because I haven't seen other teams really doing it. It caught them off guard.
It felt like TSM were uncomfortable to me watching this game with the composition they were playing, particularly with the Sage. Actually, I felt like they, despite the fact that you would think that Sage and Split is almost synonymous. At least it was back in the day. Yeah, but it's coming back into favor a little bit more now. Except we're just literally pulling out plays from Vision Strikers, just a bunch of flash and dash plays, a lot of playing around the breach as well, comboing the util with the breach. And it was taking them off guard so often.
TSM have really never been that great at Split as well. It's a map that they've occasionally figured out by running like triple duelist or having double smoke comps and stuff, but they've never had continued, consistent success on this map, which is why I say Bind is maybe like the most important map to really understand here, but it wasn't on the broadcast at all. I mean, at the same time, when you watch them play Icebox, you immediately get the impression that TSM could still win a tournament if they just figure out some other parts of their map pool. They're constantly a team that changes things up. They're not afraid to change their compositions around, experiment. They're not the kind of team that's like G2, where they previously ran the same comp all the time, or Vision Strikers, where they ran the same comp all the time and were dominant, and then they get upset and you're like, whoa, how the hell did that happen? TSM have lost in groups before to Dignitas. TSM have been upset in big series before by teams that are much lower than them, and they've lost to Exit Hero, a good up-and-coming team. I don't think it makes sense to use this as a data point for randomness in the game. Yeah. Even though it's a big upset. I mean, these are the 2 finalists from First Strike, and they do go out in the qualifiers, so it's big, but totally different reasons as to why they went out.
Yeah, I mean, it reads to me.
Go ahead, Brennon. Sorry.
I mean, I was just going to close out the topic, but you can.
I was just gonna make one last snide remark in that we've seen this happen before. Even Richard Lewis came out and was like, I remember when all the CS pros from 1.6 talked about how Source was such a dog shit game, and like how it was so much worse, right? Like it just happens all the time, right? And there's always going to be some justification, right? There are valid points hidden in the complaining. There are. It's like a little Kinder egg, and like underneath all the chocolate of the bullshit, right? You open up, there's some nice little candies, some little candies of truth. But I do feel that like the majority is like, the reality is the game's not the same what you played before. It's different. Sometimes you've been in a position of like you've been playing CS or something for like 10 years, right? And these other guys, these tier 2 guys or tier 4 guys, I'm actually just stealing Wyatt's point from before the show started, in fact. But that like sometimes they you lose. You get domed. You get doomed by a 16-year-old, and you're like 25, and you have an IRA, right? And you're getting ready to, and like the whole thing is that it just happens. It happens, and that's the evolving nature of esports and games in general, from title to title.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we're talking about, and like with all of us having, obviously you guys more than me, but I played Overwatch at the beginning. But
yeah, you did a bit.
But all of us involved in Overwatch to some extent, and we all came from TF2. We remember at the beginning of the Overwatch scene, I remember the constant complaints of Overwatch being lower skilled. Where's the mechanical skill? You just press a button and your ability works? Where's the rocket jumping and the sticky jumping? And then, well, surely all of the good TF2 players and Quake players will just come over because they have the best mechanical skill and they'll be the best.
Yeah.
Didn't happen.
Rafrancula, Lucio Mains.
Did not happen.
Yeah.
And does anyone think that Overwatch is low skill still? Oh, low skill game, Winston aims for you. I mean, it's like...
I mean, CS players probably do. But, I mean, that's CS players.
Oh, yeah, so. Steel was really good when he went over to Overwatch. Anyone remember that? I mean, he's a little bit better at Valorant. So, it just happens with every new esports title. There's always the people who were a pro at another game, and they come over and there's an expectation
but that's
mentally
but
that doesn't pan out.
There's also... that doesn't mean as well that every game is equivalent skill-wise, but most games have different skills that are required of you.
Right.
Like the comparison between Bren always makes this example where Valorant is like the League of Legends. Valorant to CS:GO is like League to Dota, where the game has been simplified, but I don't think anyone would argue that League of Legends does not have a high skill ceiling, or you can't be mechanically good at League or something. Yeah, but that's like...
That's
like
the whole
CS
point.
players now
That's what we're arguing.
Yeah, that's like literally like the CS players now complaining.
Yeah.
Like the Dota players, very insecure about their title. I know, because I cast at Dota for 2 years and played Dota for 3 years. Like they're very insecure about big League of Legends. It's an easier game. My game's a superior title. It's the exact same parallels now to CS to Valorant. It's like the exact same.
But also, I mean, in League of Legends, there's a much larger player base that's trying to get incredibly good at the game. So, when we were playing TF2, for example, there's like a player base of 100 people. It's really small. So even though the skill ceiling in the game is potentially, really high, in order to become a pro, you don't actually have to be that good because there's not that many people playing as well. Whereas in League, everyone and their nans is trying to get good at that game. So even if the skill ceiling's a little lower than it is in Dota, it's going to be way harder to actually get good at the game because some people have like almost maximized out how good you could potentially even be. And the tweet that we just had up by Richard Lewis, I think, is really interesting to contrast his response to Scream, because Scream weighed in to say that he thinks with the tagging in this game, the way that you're slowed down, the slower movement in this game, it's easier to hit shots. But Richard Lewis is responding by saying that 1.6 pros used to say that CSS was an easier game because the tagging wasn't as severe. And like you can imagine from a 1.6 player, a 1.6 pro, where they're like, oh, you can just get away with so much in CSS. Yeah. Like you can just jiggle peek corners and there's no punish for it. It's so much easier to get information because you're just not punished when you get hit. There's different ways of thinking and framing about how the game works. Like in Valorant, okay, it might be easier to land the shot if you get the tag on someone at the moment, but you have to think so much more about the utility that's coming your way and what you're going to do in certain positions. It's very strange to me that people want the game to be the same.
Yeah, well, they want it to be the same because there were some people were pros in the other game for like 20 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, look, there is some part of this where there are players who were pros in other previous games for a very long time. And now when they're playing a new game, there are younger players from those games who didn't make it yet that are going to overtake you in this one. That is the natural cycle. That is the cycle of life. That's how it happens in esports.
I'm looking at that Slash tweet, the second one. There's an argument to be made that League of Legends is mechanically harder than Dota because of the lack of turn speed, the faster button inputs, like the more important ability usage. Like, I would argue the depth of Dota comes from the knowledge of matchups, the itemization, and like the amount of knowledge required to understand and pass the game. Whereas League of Legends, you can get away with just a very limited amount of knowledge, but your mechanics can carry you pretty significantly. Like Slash has made these tweets, but he has made them. I think the first one is what's his first one saying? That top level of skill level is random. He's basically taken two examples. He's probably just seen on his Twitter feed, on his timeline, 100 Thieves being upset and TSM being upset in the qualifiers, and he's made this point for clout. Like,
I mean, that's the classic
that's all
Slasher play.
does. That's all he does.
Yeah.
Slasher's literally like r/gaming on a Twitter feed. And then he gets massive upvotes.
God. Sorry, keep going. I don't want to.
I was going to say, when you dissect both of the tweets, you really just pull them to pieces. And the real crux of this as well is that it's a bunch of the fucking old head CS players crying because the game isn't CS.
Yes, but that is it to an extent. That is it to an extent. Like, that Daps tweet, I'm sure he just like typed that and sent it and didn't really think about it. Because, can you pull it up again, Kurt, so I don't misquote it, please? But yeah, to say that hopefully they make it a lot harder to play and master. Like, do any of us or anyone really think that Valorant, in terms of the utility usage and team play, is even fucking close to being mastered?
It's really not.
I mean, it's not. Have we seen anyone play Icebox in North America? I mean, it's just silly.
Yeah. I want to butt in here. He does say mechanically.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And the thing is as well, though, I think there are some decent arguments to be made here. Like, I think it is easier to shoot than it is in CS. Like, being able to hit people, they move slower around corners, etc. But the RNG aspect is the big deal. Like, to me, you don't have to make the game really hard mechanically for it to still be an incredibly good game. I mean, it's like
Winston.
Yeah, kind of. But also, I mean, can you imagine someone going over to play chess and being like, this game takes no mechanics? What the hell?
You know, you're like LeBron James, and like, this is so easy. Like, I don't have to dribble the ball.
I barely have to use any of my muscles to play this game. But there are certain RNG aspects in the game, though, that I think are just nonsense at the moment. Like the running accuracy that they've said they're going to nerf. Your accuracy on ropes as well is kind of bonkers. And the whole like, they say, the Riot have said that they want rope accuracy to remain somewhat reasonable so that you're not just checkmated if you're in a position where you're stuck in the rope room in Split, where you can't go up the ropes because you can't challenge. But it's like, you have designed those maps with those flaws, and your solution to the flaw is another flaw. So I can definitely see the arguments for those kind of things. I think Asuna recently posted there was a clip from Asuna's stream where he was saying, garbage game, it's way too random, because he's just running, he was in like a 1v2 clutch, and he just got on a rope, sprayed one guy down, and then, I don't know, jump shot somebody else.
You killed like 3 guys on a rope.
And those are valid concerns. Like, I think that takes away from the game. But the overall, like, how the game works in terms of aiming and the speed of people shooting and stuff, it doesn't need to be incredibly difficult to master the aiming component for it still to be an incredibly good game.
And even at that, I think still I think the idea that even in terms of mechanics, that anyone has really mastered the game yet, I think is just very short-sighted.
Asinine.
I mean,
asinine.
It is. Like, again, just comparing it to any other game, Did anyone master the mechanics of Overwatch like 8 months into the game in terms of the skill of shooting? I mean, get out of here, man. It's very foolish. It's just not true.
But even still,
the clip was on Reddit. The other one.
Even if it's true, like there's a semblance of truth to the idea that the game is easier, like in terms of its entry as the mechanical side of the game. Why does that mean you have to get insecure about the state of the game as well? Like I know that's not necessarily what these players are complaining about. Like they're not really like, oh, I'm playing a worse game, but it's still a good esports title because of the depth that the utilities provide, right? In terms of the strategy and the depth that the game has available to it. Like there's no real game like it. I mean, I would argue, of my limited knowledge of Rainbow Six, that might be the closest to it, right? In terms of just how everything interacts with each other, the different characters, the different utility in that game.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a game with an incredible amount of depth, and that's where you're going to start to see the actual skill level appear. Like, okay, sure, you know, we have some mechanical outliers every now and then. This is the clip here where Suna's just like essentially killing people on the ropes, and at the end he's like garbage game.
Yeah, I mean,
he
was moving at the end there, and I think he hit a single bullet to kill that person because they were low HP. But I can understand clips like that saying that is like, if that decides a round in a match, that feels like you shouldn't have been rewarded for that play,
right?
But I don't think you can extrapolate situations like that to this is why Tier 2 Valorant is so volatile. It's volatile because it's an early scene.
Yeah.
And you look at other counterexamples, G2's incredible dominance in Europe, the other European teams that have been able to stay at the top the entire time. The like SUMN and Heretics win streak and dominance over Tier 2 and then immediately becoming top European teams. The fact that Vision Strikers are on a 45-match win streak. I mean, if Valorant was actually a random game, I mean, it's 49 now. Yeah, because they just played some of their qualifier matches for VCT. But if Valorant was truly a random game in the online era, there's just no way that people would be able to put up these kind of results. It doesn't make sense. It also bothers me that these complaints are mostly coming from North America, the region that plays the most puggy style of Valorant possible. They're actually so often playing into the RNG aspects of the game, where they are playing Reyna on every map, and it's feast or famine, and they're planting and spamming through smokes in the post plant on Haven, all barreling down C long, and it's like, of course the game's going to be random. When you play it randomly, you're not playing for consistency. You haven't got a tactical base. You're playing a puggy style. Like, it would be random if you played this style in CS as well.
You guys ready to move on? Because there's a great two teams to just really move on from this topic. We're talking randomness. We're talking puggy styles. Do yourself a favor. Don't watch the FaZe LG game if you haven't seen it, because we're about to discuss it. I watched it yesterday. I think you
have it backwards on the topic. LG beat FaZe.
Yeah.
Or am I?
Well, that just shows how random Valorant is. Look how random Valorant continues to be, even in the title cards.
Oh, God.
Just peering into the alternate universe where FaZe did beat LG, 50-50 coin flip.
This spurred... We were watching this game on your stream with Mike, and this game spurred quite a discussion in terms of FaZe and where they're at, because it's been a while now with this.
They have been strategically stagnant for the longest time,
but individually improving.
Yes,
I would say.
Which is,
mechanically they've been keeping up, sure, but that's not where the difference in these top teams is going to come from.
No, I agree, but it's not just the mechanics. Like, people like Zachary got way better at his understanding of the game and how to play Cypher and stuff. And Baby Bay really worked on his consistency, so now he's really putting up numbers in basically every game that he plays. But they are just, you want to epitomize kind of RNG style Valorant. It's how FaZe plays. It's so aggro at all times, but you're just over pushing to the point where it's just whether you win your duels.
Yeah, this team has 3 guys who all want to be the playmaker every single round. They never sync up utility.
Yeah, it's insane, actually.
You can tell at the beginning of a round. This round, Corey just says, I'm just going to go for a play down mid. And he just walks down mid alone and just tries to find a kill. And then Marv does it the next round. And then Baby Bay says, I just want to walk up into A with my op. And he just walks in, no utility, just contact in with the op.
They don't combo anything.
No, they don't combo anything. There's no utility combos. And then, Zachary's kind of off on his lurk, and Raucous at the end of every round is like, the fuck, I'm alone again. 1v4. And
is this surprising to us, though? I feel like we're just back. I feel crazy. It feels like I'm in like Memento or some Christopher Nolan film where every day I wake up and there's a new like sticky note waiting for me to tell me. And it's just like, FaZe didn't use utility properly. FaZe didn't use utility properly. And then I'm just like, but I feel like I've seen this all before. Like, I honestly feel like we've had this conversation like so many times.
I know this is,
but we're back here again.
This is what's so frustrating about FaZe, and you put it best. You said like they're so good. What did you say?
I can't remember exactly what I was saying on stream, but it was basically like they are a dreadful team that wins.
Yeah,
and they're the worst winning team I've ever seen. You watch them and you're like, these guys should be losing, and yet they beat very good teams. And with some level, okay, it's not consistent against certain opponents, but when you add it up over time, they get wins against some people. They go like 50-50 with a lot of good tier 2 and sometimes tier 1 teams as well. You could have made an argument that they were the 6th best team coming out of First Strike, which is wild when they have so many inadequacies. You look like across the board and they are lacking in so many areas, and yet they're having so much success. How are they so successful when they have so many flaws? And it kills me because that stinks of a team that has mad potential to become incredible.
Yeah.
If only they would work, or maybe if only they could work on their clear issues. And the issues are so clear and so obvious. They slap you in the face every time you watch FaZe. And you feel like they should be getting bodied. And they're not. They're having really close games like this one against an LG. Well, okay, Split wasn't close. But the first two maps were really close against a team that just won against Sentinels and won a tournament.
Yeah.
And
LG have their own issues, I think. But
sure.
They play to the level of their opponents they're playing against. I always think that you get better games out of LG when they play tier 1 teams. But also these two teams, I think they have similar play styles as well and how they like to play. Fucking Zug brute force aim duels almost.
I think LG are a little more coordinated with like how they sync up off each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
They support each other more.
Yeah. But I was fucking molding watching this game and just saying for once, just please, somebody on FaZe ask the question, how am I going to combo this piece of utility? What value am I going to get out of this piece of utility or this ultimate? How am I going to maximize my what I get out of it? Because the amount of fucking Hunter's Furies I see Raucous just int into the wind, and nobody's taking space off the back of it. He's not getting kills. He's not clearing common angles. They just use each ability in their own little island from their own point of view.
Yeah.
Like, that's how they play the game. They don't think about the game as a team game. They think about the game as a 1v1v1v1v1.
It's like watching a ranked team play where there's very little coordination between the players. And this is what bothers me so much, is that they have so much success for a bad team.
Yeah.
And
imagine if they fucking just started syncing up like some simple plays.
Yeah.
Simple plays.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that you can see. The thing is as well, though, I think this is the kind of team that would maybe get worse the more they try to sync things up, because they thrive in the chaos of taking individual aim duels. Like that's where they actually find their success.
But does that inherently build a paradox that this team can thus never be good?
Yes,
yeah,
and I think that is true.
Yeah, I mean that might be true, because since the dawn of this team, there has been discussion as to whether or not it should get nuked, because it's been so visibly bad at times. Yet, at one point, at the beginning, they didn't have success and they didn't have team play. Now they have success and no team play.
Yeah.
And they've certainly, they made strides individually. And when you're watching a team and you're watching the individuals improve considerably and the results improve along with it, you're not thinking time to, press the nuke button.
Yeah.
Because you're watching them improve.
Yeah.
But it's gotten to a point where how much more are the improvements individually going to affect in game? Because it's getting to the point where that type of thing is marginal. where the real skill, the real success will always come from team play, better strategy, better preparation, better communication, understanding of the opponents. There is a point where in every game, your individual skill is marginal. The improvements you're making are fractions of percentage improvements at a point. But what you can do as a team, those areas you can improve outside of that are always, I feel, far greater. And they've just not done anything in that respect. So what is the solution? Do they need a coach? Will a coach even help this team? Will they listen to a coach? Because it does. I mean, at least you, by their play style, it leads you to believe their personality types are just, they're all just doing their own thing. They're not listening to anyone. There's no...
Yeah, I talked about this a little bit on my stream as well, where my original thought was, these guys have all come from Overwatch. Overwatch League in general has the culture of, you do what your coach says. There's pretty strong coaches. These guys would know how to operate within a coaching structure. But when you actually look at the individual players and go down the list, none of them have ever played with a coach that was any good. And apart from Baby Bay, who spent one stage playing under Krusty, who's an incredibly good coach. But I don't think he really was part of a system that was functional. Other than that, you have Corey, who played for the Justice, an incredibly poorly coached and uncoordinated team that relied on individual talent to succeed. You have Raucus, a team that was just, as far as I could tell, purely player run and really kind of fucked up as a result of that as well. You've got Zachary, who played for the Dallas Fuel, again, another team that always had issues with coaching, and he himself was a product of, or like his apparent failures on Dallas were a product of some of the poor coaching that was there. And then Marv, who I don't really know, about. Yeah,
but I don't think he ever played under a coach.
Yeah, I mean, Marv is so young that this is like his first real game.
Yeah,
so.
But it's not the same as a Sinatra, for example, where you know that the guy understands the value of good coaching and would respect that and have an appreciation for how much that can make a difference. A lot of these guys kind of missed the wave on
I will
good
say, though, I don't
think
that makes them broken. They can still be coached. I want to see them have some discipline instilled into this team.
Yeah,
I want to see how far they can go. I'm not going to write them off and say that they're too used to not having any sort of structure and being player run for it to not be successful. I don't think that's a fair claim, despite the fact that they have missed the boat, they missed the wave, like you were about to say before I rudely interrupted you in the middle of your point. But yeah, I want to see them with a coach. I want to see them how far they can go, because this team has potential. As we've been saying,
I think because they've worked with such poor coaches in the past, they're probably not incentivized to give them the time of day most of the time. That might be an unfair assumption to these guys.
Mate, I'd come in there. Bananas and hand.
I actually think that is kind of an unfair assumption, because I think, at least in Zach's case, Zach was sort of like, even though you could argue that the results were mixed, like Zach was essentially the grown in the test tube son of Arrow. Not that Zach himself was grown in a test tube, but more the fact that he was his protege in a sense. So like he was someone that had been with Arrow for a long time. I feel like he did take Arrow's advice seriously for coaching, and Baby Bay had worked with coaches before. I really do think. And Marv is so young that he doesn't know like his asshole from a hole in the ground type of thing. Like Marv, you could tell, like you could get a coach on Marv and he would develop, right? Like I think it's unfair to write off these guys. Like the only one you could maybe argue would ever be a lost cause is like Raucus, but that's just because if you know how Raucus is, like you know his personality type. But like even still, I think this team can be turned around if they do get it. But I really think we're in a Cinderella conundrum then, because we're all trying to find the glass slipper to fix this team.
Exactly that,
versus just perhaps we need to scatter them to the four corners and just have them find new rosters.
If they did get scattered to the four corners, I think every single one of these players could be successful on other teams. Yeah. I mean, I might have doubts about one or two of them, but I think the vast majority of the FaZe roster, if they were just a single playmaker on another team, would be successful at the tier 1.5 or tier 1 level. But together, it seems like it's a monumental task for a coach to turn this team around, and yet there's so much potential if you do that.
Yeah, it is a mega task. But if you could do it, I think you would have a very successful team. And I think the thing is, they need to find someone who's going to try, because I think that this team has essentially apexed with what they're doing right now, with what they're bringing to the server right now. They have apexed, and they're not going, like, the only way for them to improve and ever win tournaments from this point is to have a coach and find the strategic depth for the team. And it's going to be very hard to do, and it might not ever be possible. And then at that point, I think it has to be blown up, because right now, yeah, they're good enough to maybe they can make some quarterfinals, but I don't think, with the rate of other teams improving, like when you look at Xset, a team with talented players, but also a team that is tactically deep, or teams like Andbox, how they've been improving, that are tactically deep and have really good players.
Yeah, Immortals as well. I mean,
they're going to get past.
Yeah.
They are going to get past, because the other teams are improving so much faster than them at this point.
Yeah.
That I think that they need to try something with a coach, or else they are going to just slowly slip further and further, and it'll have to be blown up anyway.
Yeah. I mean, they said, or Shinobi said, or something, that they were working with Shinobi for the previous tournament. But I don't know whether that's a long-term thing. I think Shinobi probably working with a bunch of different teams right now by the smell of it around the scene. So I don't know whether that was a good fit at the end of the day. But I think they do need somebody, to push them into that next tier.
We'll see.
The rewards are great if you can pull it off.
Yeah,
we shall see.
Yeah. LG on the other side of it, though, I was reasonably impressed, but they didn't look as clean as when they won the previous tournament.
No, they didn't. That's why I was saying I think they play to the love of their opponents, but you can see the potential of a team like LG. Like they're pure, we've said this last time, but they're pure fundamentals in terms of how they space, how they trade, how they swing with each other, how they play off of each other's just positioning is like much better than FaZe and than a lot of the other tier 2 teams. Like you can see them just on the rise, just barely breaking into the cusp of tier 1. There's a lot of potential with this LG squad.
Yeah, they look pretty decent.
Yeah.
What's
the next topic?
Who's next on the bracket?
Okay.
We're still going down the bracket.
We are, yeah. We're still going down. So this is Immortals knocking out C9. Apparently they qualified number 1 in the seeding tournament.
Yes.
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
I didn't watch the seeding.
I saw the final of it, and I have to say it was Immortals. Legitimately, these additions, Nature and Chemicals, feels like exactly what they needed. Like it literally, but also this was a seeding tournament, right?
Yeah.
So we're online. We're not playing for big stakes. I do think seeding is very important though, moving forward, especially getting number 1. Like it's going to give them such a huge like cushion moving forward.
How important is it though if other teams don't take it seriously?
Well, who even finished 8th seed? I don't even know.
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty unfair to argue that teams aren't taking it seriously. I think it's just a difference of opinion to say like more how seriously.
A lot of the pros I've spoken to have said that with seeding games, they just, from the future onwards, they just are not going to be taking it seriously.
Yeah, and I saw a lot of people tweeting like, about to play my BO5 for seeding and stuff. It's hard to know which teams were giving it their all.
I'm not saying all of them were. I guarantee there's some teams here that were taking it seriously.
Yeah, I mean, Immortals for sure. One of them. I would say like Envy are another team that seemed like they always take those games.
Yeah, and I think that's more frustration over the format more so than like they stop trying, right? I think it'd be very plausible that they're frustrated, they come in, they play seriously, then they start losing, like, fuck it, I'm giving up, right? That's a super player thing to do. Players do that shit all the time. But I think it's unfair to categorize it immediately as everyone is not taking it seriously. It's more of like the frustration of it will build. And
because it is a seeding tournament, if like half the teams don't take it as seriously and they're going to be getting lower seeding and they're going to be almost like undervalued as a team coming into the actual tournament, then doesn't that just kind of throw at the entire concept?
Yeah,
because then the value of getting number 1 seed is lessened.
I would personally say that you shouldn't consider Immortals the favorite for next weekend, even though they won in fairly convincing fashion this weekend.
Yeah.
Right? And
I would agree with that.
That is, I think.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
And also, I assume that with the number 1 seed, they get to pick from the 5th through 8th seeding. So they get to pick from like Xset, LG, Andbox.
I mean, there's value there.
Somebody else. And Gen.G. Yeah, there's definitely value there. But could I still see them like, only making the semis or something? Yeah, I think I don't think that you can use this weekend's results to say you know exactly what's going to happen next weekend.
No.
Mm-hmm. Also,
but I will say though, chemicals in nature look good.
Yeah.
They actually are the additions that this team need, especially chemicals. I think Neptune was fine, but I mean, we discussed how we felt like his utility and like the way he played Cypher and anchored sites was a little bit unchanging. And nature, I definitely was a lot more dynamic in that respect. But chemicals finally getting a Jett player and a duelist that is putting up frags like all the time and is actually getting the entries and just getting kills they need in like some clutch situations. It really feels like this team, they just looked so much better. So much better.
Yeah.
They really did. Those are two great additions. I mean, now I think this is another roster where, at least so far, and we have to give it some more time to really see, but at least so far, it looks like this could be one of those rosters where there's just no weak link in terms of any element of individual play, really. Like the fragging output and effective utility usage, they're pretty great across the board. Yeah. And I think it was nice you were seeing more output from Stani as well. Now that he's no longer in the in-game leading role. Yeah. It looked like he was having more high impact fragging moments throughout the games. But yeah, I mean, they were impressive. And yeah, at the end of the day, I don't know. It's a seeding tournament, and then you're seeding into a double limb bracket as well.
Exactly.
It's
so
not
it doesn't
even
even matter
single
that much.
limb. So like, it's
I will appreciate as much as I was shit talking Riot earlier for the general format of Challenger 1, not really having too much of a semblance of, I guess, impact on the wider circuit that they've created this year. It is very thorough.
Oh yeah,
it is incredibly thorough in terms of determining, like, when we get to the end of the year, you're going to know who the best teams are.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely who are going to be involved, just on the basis of, like, how many fucking games there are to be played, and, like, just to decide even seemingly meaningless things like the seeding in these double limb tournaments.
Yeah, for sure.
And the seeding is only for the Challenger 1 qualifier. So
exactly.
Once you get to the Challenger 2 qualifier, there's already going to be 4 teams that are in it, so then you're just playing down to 4.
Which is why it's not like the earlier points we were making, like 100 Thieves and TSM not making it in.
Yeah.
It's not a huge deal.
Also, NSG tweeted about, they actually tweeted a really funny tweet about the seeding tournament, like changing it for next time as well. It was a SpongeBob meme of someone being force-fed BO5 seeding matches. And they were like, okay, guys, we hear you. So, I don't know whether they ever intended to run those for future tournaments, but it seems like they kind of understand that the entire scene is not a huge fan of them. I am really excited for this Immortals roster, though. Everybody that I saw on the timeline, I wasn't really watching these games. I was catching up on VODs of the European games that we'll talk about later on. But everyone that I saw on my Twitter timeline was talking about how incredible Packington and Gumber are again for being able to find these talents. Once again, another roster just pounding for Immortals and immediately coming out the gates looking like a top contender. They do. The only thing that I'm slightly concerned about, Packington also tweeted something like, can we stop calling it an upset that Immortals are winning now? Or something like that. I was like, hold your horses there, mate. Because they looked really good as soon as they signed Shot Up and JMO previously. They had that honeymoon period where, did they win the tournament or did they come second?
They came in second to Andbox.
Right, second to Andbox.
Renegades and SG.
And it was really close. And Shot Up looked like a beast. Yeah. And then Shot Up hasn't really gone to that degree since then. And okay, they were a little bit quiet. They didn't appear in some of the other regular tournaments while they were figuring out their roster. But this seems like a return to form. But you need to see it consistently over a larger period of time before you can rate them as like an elite tier 1 team.
Exactly. I think, this, much like every Immortals roster, I will say again, I think that this team should have aspirations and likely be somewhere within the top 8. That is kind of where Immortals have always been. I think that's where they're going to be again. I think this roster has potential to maybe make it even a little bit
I'd like to see them top 5.
Yeah, like I think they could, again, at least from what we've seen so far, it looks like they could be making a claim for a top 5 spot in NA. One of the crucial things for me as well with this tournament, it's not just the new additions. Shot Up was playing his best tournament since that first tournament.
Right.
He was really playing well. But I am concerned with the fact that all of his good games are always him playing Reyna, and he plays Reyna all the time. I mean, he essentially plays Reyna all the time. He plays a little bit of Phoenix, but I do have some concern with that because I do not believe in the value of Reyna in a long-term BO5 against I
was having a long discussion
tactical team,
with my chat yesterday regarding this topic of Reyna. It comes up a lot, doesn't it? Like the idea of Reyna over duelists. I mean, the general approach is if you look at it on paper.
I'll be right back.
Of course, so. The general approach
heard
is
this one before.
Yeah, I mean, he knows he can leave this conversation. He's heard it all. The general approach to this conversation topic is that Reyna on paper does not provide as much utility as other duelists, as other agents like, I don't know, for example, Raze, Phoenix, something else, anything that can be used to set up your team, take map control. But at this early point of the game's cycle, where we've been highlighting the importance of proper utility usage, the strategy that's evolved around that, like the kind of strategy and set plays. At this point in the game's life cycle, like there's still, I guess, teams that are relying on like individual mechanical ability, like one player to be comfortable and pop off. And that's what it comes down to. When you see these players playing Reyna, it's literally probably a case of them being like, oh, I want to play Reyna. I feel like I'm really going to perform well on Reyna today. Like a feeling, like a personal feeling, despite the fact that it, on paper, like if you look at it, you are getting probably less value out of a Reyna comparatively to other agents. And that's what it comes down to. But I think over time, you're going to see less Reyna being played overall.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was so hardcore against the Reyna like 3 months ago, maybe it's been even more than that, maybe like 5 months of just railing against Reyna usage. And recently I've been coming around to the idea.
Oh, God.
Why?
The reason being,
you've been coming around to the idea of Reyna. I'm back, by the way. Have you been coming back? Have you been coming around to it?
A tiny bit, and not on all maps, but some value. I think that because I've been coming from the point of view of like utility usage so much, I think is something that I've been personally overlooking when it comes to the Reyna is how annoying it is to play against one. Like, you have to use utility to clear out all the dumb one-and-done angles. Whereas if you're playing against a team that's playing like a Raze and a Jett, or even better, like a Raze and a Phoenix, when nobody can be playing a one-and-done angle because you just get traded out. But if you're playing against a Reyna, and I've been especially noticing this on Icebox, where I feel like Reyna's actually maybe even a meta pick on Icebox.
On that map.
If you're playing like the A defensive site on Icebox, you could be anywhere. You can be anywhere, and you can get value anywhere you play. If you're
you also get so much information. I feel at times when you're just able to just like get a kill, play off the orb, the information you can get from a free peek is pretty good, especially on Icebox.
And it's not just a free peek. You can play with way more confidence when you're on Reyna because you have that get out of jail free card to stop you being traded. If you're confident in your aim, you can push and get value, and by that I mean stuff like if you want to, so let's say we're even playing Bind somewhere where no one would play the Reyna, or at least the top teams don't tend to. If you're pushing out of hookah and you feel confident to push all the way to market, because even if you run into their entire team, if you get a kill, you can dismiss and get out, and it gives you that option to disengage. So you can do things that you wouldn't feel comfortable doing on other agents. And it's not like, it's not utility you're providing to the team, it's your positioning can be different when you're playing Reyna, which I think is the value of it. And it's something that I wasn't really thinking too much about previously. And I still don't think it's good on every map, but I think actually, the thing that I noticed as well is Heretics, for example, with Nisao running it on split, where Nisao will just push down mid quietly on defense in a lot of the rounds. And if there's somebody holding market, or if there's somebody holding sewers, he's getting all of that information down mid, and it turns into a 1v1 duel. And if he wins it, you can't punish him. And if he loses it, well, that's at least he had the confidence to be able to go for it and push it, which he wouldn't have done if he was playing anything else. So he's like gathering information, and often it's going to be for free, because then it's at the end of it, you have a 50-50 duel.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here. My issue with it is that if you accept that as the game's lifespan goes on, that the mechanical kind of like differences between teams, like the raw aim, things like that, is just going to level out over time between teams. There's going to be outliers, sure. There's going to be like players who are exceptional in those roles, but the real difference in skill level is going to come from utility, strategy, those type of things. Reyna's just not a good pick. And like those kind of like cutesy little plays, yeah, you can play these more unorthodox positions, and yeah, you force the enemy to then, I guess, commit utility and like a thought process to play against a Reyna instead that might throw people off. And yeah, it might be a more comfortable role. I just don't think that's the case. I mean, there's a couple of reasons why as well. I just think overall her entire kit is so feast or famine. And I think as the game develops as well, one of the things that I really hate at the moment is how teams think about ult usage in Valorant. I don't think they've reached the point where they're particularly good with it. You see teams where there'll be times where I want to see them use an ultimate because they'll gain a ton of momentum off the back of it, or a lot of teams just don't really think about, I think, ultimates that well at the moment in terms of how they can use them in a round to maybe win a round, snowball it even further. But like the sooner you're using ultimates, the sooner you're building them back up again. There's some cases where teams are holding on to specific ultimates to counter other ones, and there's the mind games of that aspect. But Reyna, like her ultimate is just fucking useless. You've essentially locked out one agent. I mean, not entirely useless, but in terms of the impact you can get out of Empress, it's way less compared to something like a Phoenix or Raze.
It's arguably the worst ult in the game.
It is arguably the worst ult in the game. And it's just one small minor aspect that's added on top of why I already don't like Reyna as an agent. And I think it's going to get worse as time goes on as well. It's something that
I don't think you can even make an argument for what ult is worse than Empress. I don't think there is any other arguments other than Empress.
No, it is definitely the worst.
Yeah.
I mean, I think right now, Reyna is actually like, I think that Reyna is the meta pick on Icebox. I think that Reyna as your A-site anchor is just the best agent to have there right now.
Is that because of the map design though, right?
Yes.
Just
I think the map, because it's so easy to always find one as the A anchor, and then you can dismiss. I think Reyna's super powerful as an A anchor on Icebox, but outside of that, I just don't think she gives enough value long-term on the other maps. Like if you were playing out a series, if you were to somehow quantify the value of utility you get over playing a full BO5 on the 4 other maps of the utility that you were getting from a Reyna versus, if you have a Raze, if you have a Jett, etc., it's just, it doesn't compare. It doesn't compare over the long term. Also, I do wonder, one thing I wanted to pose is, with Reyna being an agent that is so focused on your individual confidence as well. Yeah. And this being like a seeding tournament and seeing shot up, like just, rip these teams on Reyna. I do wonder if there is an element of that comes from in the back of his head, that subconscious knowledge that this doesn't really matter that much. So we might as well go for it. And then you get that one, you knock down the first domino, and then it just keeps fucking going. I think that is honestly pretty possible. Because these are the type of circumstances that could just breed a Reyna pop-off game.
Yeah. And it is going to be more inconsistent, generally speaking. But I think we haven't really talked about Cloud9 at all during all of this.
I mean, what is there to say? I mean, we didn't see them.
No, we didn't see them. They made some organizational changes recently as well, though. They brought over the head coach from Cloud9 Korea to be the coach of the Cloud9 Blue team. And they also brought over Robin, who people will know from Overwatch because he used to be the GM of the London Spitfire team. And he's now the GM of that Cloud9 team as well. So it's going to be interesting to see them. They failed to qualify as well. It's been a bit of a fairly significant drop-off. I suppose you could say they're a bit unlucky to hit Immortals in the seeding match, but that's a team that you should be trying to beat if you're aiming to get back to where Cloud9 were previously.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just wanted to hit on that a tiny little bit.
That
give
is
them a small moment.
That is interesting, though, bringing the coach from C9 Korea. I mean, I guess
who was the coach from C9 Korea again? Because I know it wasn't. Because I know at one point they had Pavane, right? Pavane, but he had moved on, right? No, he'd already left that team.
He's on Bear Claw Gaming. Yeah. I actually can't remember the name of the coach. They announced it in their video, and I think you could find it on like VLR or Liquipedia, but I can't remember the name of the coach.
I mean, you would hope this is going to bring a new tactical look to that Cloud9 team, and maybe that is their advantage moving forward.
It's autumn.
Yeah.
Right.
So maybe that is going to be their advantage moving forward. When you think back about the last looks we saw of Xenon Korea with the Viper wackiness and just where they were trying to take their own game, adapt, like bringing that to the NA team could certainly just be their advantage over the other teams that are just running around playing pugs. So that could work out. But
yeah,
I can't really see C9 reaching the top level or like the kind of level that they reached previously with the current iteration of the team.
No, I think there's other teams that look like they're more on the come up.
Yeah.
And I actually think as well that the whole randomness debate is interestingly timed right now because it seems like we're in the middle of a restructuring of the top NA scene at the beginning of 2021. There's been a bunch of roster changes. There have been people that have really tried to solidify their roster, and now is the beginning of the big push for these tier 2 teams to become tier 1.5, tier 1 teams. And your previous, Sentinels look shaky, 100 Thieves just lost, TSM got knocked out, and all of these other teams are on the come up. T1 have changed their setup completely, but these other teams that are on the come up, teams like Envy are on the rebound. NRG are finally looking like a tier 1.5 team for real. Luminosity just won a tournament. Exit have been on a tear in tier 2. Andbox look really tactically sound and they're getting their shit together. Immortals have got cracked out players at every position. The scene is in flux right now. You couldn't accurately give a top 10 power ranking, I think, currently. You have to wait for the chips to fall. And we don't really know like who the best teams are, right? Even straight after first strike.
Yeah, your point there just made me want to give more credit actually to TSM, despite losing, for them always attempting to change. They're always attempting to do something new, which is something to respect. I think they're not just resting on what they've built. They're trying to push themselves forward. When you kind of compare that to Sentinels, for example, where they've been kind of stuck.
They have been stagnant for a while.
Stasis, they did make it through. They lost to Immortals in the seeding match. I forget who they had to play in the
Andbox.
Oh, right. Wait.
Yeah.
Sentinels had to play against Andbox.
No, I mean in the round to qualify for the top 8.
To qualify?
Yeah, I forget who they had to play there.
BBG?
Oh yeah, BBG.
Oh, okay, right, yeah. So
they quite an easy run, honestly.
Serenity team is actually pretty good. They're on the come up. I wanted to somehow fit it in on the last episode, but there was no way to do it. But the Omen on the Serenity team, Bang, is cracked. He's really good. He is really, really good. I watched him play in the that like 5K Knights tournament that was like the week before this one. He was just popping. He's really good. That Serenity team has some potential. So like I don't think that them taking a map off Sentinels, they shouldn't, but it's not appalling.
Sure.
From Sentinels. But
yeah,
I guess Sentinels just kind of made it through with a fairly easy bracket. They didn't really get pushed too hard.
Well, Sentinels have changed some stuff up as well, though. Sentinels are now starting to run sick on Sova when it comes to Icebox, and they need to make changes for the rest of their map pool as well. Their Ascent and their Bind both look really poor right now. Their Icebox has started to become a lot better now that Sick is playing the Sova. I like this look from Sentinels. It's not just run it onto A every single round. They're looking like they're trying to activate their brain cells a little bit as they play this map. But their split is not as dominant as it used to be. I don't know how they'll really adapt a new split, to be honest. But Haven is easily their best map. And outside of that, they've got like a slightly better Icebox now and a bit of a shaky split, and then Bind and Ascent are just all over the place. They could lose to any team. Yeah.
It's always interesting seeing Sick just playing every agent in the game at this point, aside from Sage, which he was so good at. And Sage still ultra viable, as you saw in the Red Bull tournament with every team running Sage damn near. Yeah. I would like to maybe just see him go right back to Sage, and I wonder if some of these problems wouldn't be fixed, or at least it would help with the comfortability of the team.
Yeah.
I think it would also allow Shazam to maybe play Breach, which I'd like to see.
Let's move on to the rest of the NA teams in the bracket. I think the last game we're going to cover is the Andbox and T1, essentially.
This was a great game. It was an interesting. It was a very interesting game.
Yeah, what did you guys think of them of T1? Because T1 have changed their roles around, and I didn't watch this game. I missed it.
Well, I think it's funny to look at the Reddit narrative. You were telling me about the Reddit narrative. I mean, it's a lot of fun.
The narrative of the people was funny because Brax's stats against the the diamond teams that they were playing before the actual games against real teams started, when they were playing real amateur teams, Brax was just plowing them. And I saw so many people saying holy shit, his Jett is fucking cracked. And then they played against Andbox, and it was immediately, his Jett's fucking terrible. He has to get off of it right away. And it's just switched immediately. I honestly thought that, well, first of all, the first map in that series was Split, and I think that their role changes helped them on Split, because that was a map before that I think the role changes they were just lost on when they were trying to figure out how
Dazed
to work.
was playing Raze.
With the Dazed on Raze.
No.
They didn't have the right roles, so I think that these swaps have made their Split better, which you immediately saw. They lost that map, but that is probably Andbox's. It's either their best map or in their top 2 maps. They're one of the best tactical teams on Split in NA right now. So the fact that they had a respectable performance against them versus what they have shown on that map in the past, I felt good with. And then on the second map, Bind, they just rolled Andbox. Yeah. And I thought it was fairly ironic watching that game, because they were rolling Andbox using some of the same tactics that Andbox have been using for months with the Phoenix on Bind, but Andbox couldn't figure out how to play against their own shit on the map. And they were just getting wrecked. And then it just flipped on the last one. It was a wild series.
I feel like this is much more of the skadoodle adjustment hour, honestly, in this tournament, because I actually don't think Brax's Jett was awful poo-poo tier.
No,
it definitely wasn't a comfortable on it, as comfortable as Ska was when he was playing it. But I really feel like this was the Ska adjustment hour in this particular series, because I felt like, in particular, his Raze was just not up to, when he was playing Jett and he was a fragging monster, I didn't think his Raze was nearly as comfortable as it should have been. So for someone that they had playing that duelist at that time, because they've swapped him between the Silva, between the Raze at times. So I didn't like his Raze too much, honestly, during this tournament series. I feel like he just didn't feel comfortable on it at all.
What I do like about the T1 swaps, though, is that putting Brax on Jett and Scar on this has made the rest of their team way more comfortable. The rest of the team's roles fit. And, okay, Scar was a top 10 player when he was playing Jett, and Brax might not be that. But the overall benefits for T1 are going to come with time, I think, because their team just looks... I mean, Dazed is going to be way more comfortable playing the Sentinel role. And I think Scar, over time, will really continue to have big value in this role, especially the more he can play the Sova. And Spider playing the Raze and the Phoenix on the Raze when it comes to oh no, he doesn't play the Raze on
he did no, he's been playing Smokes mostly.
Yeah, he's been playing Smokes on Split, which I thought was a little bit strange, but fair enough. That's fine. I think though that this change has been positive for them overall. And the more time that Brax gets on Jett, and the more time that Scar gets on his roles as well, I think they're gonna look like a more comfortable team. They look like the system is gonna work now. Whereas I was confused as to what the solution was previously. A lot of people always run Spider on the duelist. But the problem with running Spider on the duelist full time is that you then have a hole of what do you do with the smokes? Is AZK playing smokes full time then?
Right.
And that's your...
You want him on... I think you still want... You want AZK on Breach.
Yeah, you really do. That's
definitely his best role.
It's by far and away his best role. So you don't want to put AZK in an uncomfortable position where he has to fill smokes because Spider's playing the duelist.
Yeah. I felt as well that on the third map, Ascent, where they did get kind of blown out, I don't think that was due to the role swaps directly, in the sense that it wasn't, they're just bad at these agents and that's why they lost, which was, I just don't think that was the case. They just got rolled on their defensive half because they were playing mega passive in mid.
They just gave up mid every round.
They lost mid control every single round. for essentially free. Andbox used
Andbox were going into
smoke and
Andbox were going into
up.
T1 spawn repeatedly, like 3 or 4 rounds on attack. Andbox were in T1 spawn, pushing them for like a B pinch or something.
Yeah, again, you can see it on the minimap right now. They would just put this one smoke down, Andbox, and they pretty much just had mid for free every single time.
Yeah.
No contention from market, and they just always had Skadoodle playing in spawn, jump spotting over the fence, and he never actually. I mean, how can he? He's just one Sova.
Yeah,
he can't just send in his shock darts and recon and run in himself. So he was kind of just doing this every round.
And it's not like they had a Killjoy turret giving them information for when a guy's passing market. Like, you can put the Killjoy turret on the switch so that you have that info. They weren't doing that.
Yeah.
But Andbox were actually doing this on Split as well, where they were pushing B Heaven and then wrapping Android behind to CT to do like a pinch play on B, where they come from behind you as well.
Yeah.
And they were doing it here, where they push into spawn and then they kind of split attack B, but from in front and behind instead of pushing market, which I thought was really interesting, but shouldn't work because you should be contested in mid, and they never did.
I mean, just look at the mini-map right now, where what the T1 players have to be watching. There's so many angles they have to cover. And the thing about it is, as well, I mean, Andbox are one of the most coordinated teams in NA right now. They are not one of the teams that you want to have freedom to just drop their well thought out execute on you.
Yeah,
you want to break their setup.
Yeah, you have to
because
fight
they are
them.
going to drop the nuke on you on one of your sites. So I think they just played the map incorrectly.
I also think though that's because they're new to these roles. You give them more time on these roles, and they'll figure out how to play their roles properly, and the maps will get better.
Especially for like a Sint, because I feel like Ska on Silva, they might not know like what they want to do with his information yet. Like, and he might not even know how he wants to call, like when he's going for this info, or like how they're going to play off his utility, right? Like they might not even know what to do, especially like on that contest on mid, right? Because they're just having a bunny hop around. Like, I feel like this could definitely be linked to a role issue, at least the initial swap.
But also, wasn't this criticism of T1 before? In terms of their lack of adapting on the fly to what teams are running at them. Like, they're very, very passive gameplay.
Yeah, usually on attack as well is where the T1 passivity.
But you think this is more of a map-defined issue?
This was it was on this map specifically that they just were not playing. They did not pressure mid. I don't want. There's two things I don't want to get conflated here, which is when I say they're being passive, I don't want that to be conflated with the old T1 narrative that is expired, where they were passive and sitting in bind spawn on attack.
That was attack. That was
different.
They don't do that anymore.
They don't do that anymore. Their bind is actually really good. So I don't want to get those two. When I say passive, don't conflate it with the old T1 passive narrative. And then also, I don't want to get the roles not working right now, however you put it.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get that conflated with the players on these roles are not good. Because I think that the players on these roles can work.
Yes.
I think it makes the whole team more comfortable. I think there are potential with these roles. They probably need more time, but I think that these changes could take the team an extra step that they wouldn't have with the previous roles, because I think their map pool will be better with these in a bit of time.
I think it's just time.
Yeah, so I just don't want to get those things conflated, because I feel like people were saying that Brax was the problem on this map. He was like opping on A, just getting executed on every round.
Yeah, I mean, I did feel though that Brax was just kind of statically holding areas a lot. And again, with more time, I think he'll push the limits of what he's able to actually do on that role. On paper, it didn't make too much sense, but when you watch it in the server, you're like, okay, I can see the potential for this with T1.
They only went for one real aggressive play on defense, which was the vintage shark attack, the classic flash and dash, the original one that swept the nation and is now a absolutely dead play that no team should attempt because everyone is ready for it, which is the breach flash down mid, the jet dash into the connector, Brax did it once, died immediately. So you can tell that I think they're still working on the strategic elements of this map and the tactics they want to implement. Definitely. Because if that's the only one you use, then that's like everybody knows that one.
Yeah.
But I can see the potential here, and I do want to give it some time. But Sorry, I do want to
go
give
on.
extra. We have to talk about Andbox a little bit. At least give them credit
for
really continuing to improve, continuing to push their own tactics forward, developing their own tactics continuously.
Ye had a great series as well.
Ye has been really good recently.
He's been on fire. He's been on fire recently.
Disaster.
Oh, no.
But yeah, Ye has been slamming recently. And when you have the duo of Ye and Android both going off within their excellent system, they can really succeed.
I'm excited to see Andbox, I think. Just in
really
the actual
cool
double
team.
elim portion, because we still... I wouldn't say that T1 is the test, right, for this team. I mean, the Andbox is the team that's always been the one that we've been seeing at the cusp of breaking into Tier 1 constantly for the longest time now.
T1's a great win to have under your belt, because T1, most people were ranking them as like the 5th best team after First Strike. So that's a good, or maybe even 4th, actually, some people.
Weren't we most people in that scenario?
Yeah, we were most people.
We under that? Yeah.
People, I was going to mention it earlier, but people were including this with the like upset randomness, like T1 is out and TSM and 100 Thieves.
Silly, I think.
Which is, I mean, it's...
I think people just conflate like well-known at times, like well-known teams. If they lose, everyone's like upset, and it's like no, not always. A lot of well-known teams can have like just not only bad teams, but in this case, T1's not bad. It's more of just they can lose, to pretty good teams.
Yeah, I also it's kind of weird
holding opinions.
There is a lot of volatility when it comes to these kind of games. In CS, the best teams don't win every tournament. Like they can have long periods of dominance, but you can still be the best team in a region and not win every tournament. You can just win more often or place higher than everybody else. Like you don't have to be dominant to be the best.
Speaking of dominance, Brazil taking over.
Yeah,
with no streamed matches.
Excuse me.
We're gonna recap the Brazilian side of the VCT so far, because a lot of these games weren't streamed, and also they were playing like in a best of one format again. So essentially, what this comes down to as well, the reoccurring theme has been me blaming Wyatt for this, and I've just remembered that it's essentially the tournament organizers that are in charge of a lot of these early formats. Essentially, is what it comes down to, I think. But yeah, let's just go down to Brazilian Challengers 1, I think, and have a look. So starting with the Open Qualifier, which is took place quite a bit earlier, you'll see that the way this was seeded, now this is just part of the bracket. The full bracket, if you click full bracket, Kurt, at the top, opens up the full bracket, which is a ton more teams. Just to give you an idea of how many teams entered into this one,
just
241, I believe.
Teams. Yeah, that's
so quite a few teams, a lot of buy rounds, but a hell of a lot of teams in the Brazilian region as a whole. Just, I mean, this is just to give you guys an idea of how big this Open Qualifier was. Because I had some questions where I was like, okay, why are Furia playing against Gamelanders in the round of 32? Well, they kind of seeded them. I don't know. They could have seeded it a little bit better. Let's be honest.
I think it's just
they could have seeded that a lot better with that many teams.
I'm assuming it's because they just count Furia as like a new team. They have no record, so it's possible that they can play
record, but some of the best players in
no record. Possibly going to be the best team in the region. But yeah, unfortunately, this game wasn't streamed. I mean, this would have been the best game of the tournament.
And it was just before the qualification period to get these teams like through. But the Brazilian region is doing things a little bit different to the other regions in the way that they're working. So essentially, there's 3 qualifications to going to the Challengers final. But Challenger 1 is being done differently in every single region. So you can see here you've got the qualified teams, but the main event, if we go over to the main event, it's complicated. There's 2 groups of double elimination. So the good teams are kind of separated into different sides of the bracket, but essentially 4 teams are going to be qualifying, and if you qualify, you make it into the Challenger 2 without playing through the Open Qualifier system there. So the exact same system and idea and concept as the other regions, but just a different way to get there.
You don't play it out for a winner of Challenger 1.
Yes.
Which is weird.
Each group has 2 winners. One team might play less games, but in terms of the prize money, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see that there's only a minor difference. So you can see each group, if you win Group A and Group B playing the least amount of games. So in the upper bracket, you get the 15,000. And if you come second, that's in the double elimination part of it, you get 10,000. You can also qualify for challengers too.
I honestly, I kind of like it. For the first, I like it for the Challenger 1.
Yeah.
I like it.
Because
it avoids the seeding.
Yeah.
All the games matter. And you still end up with the top 4. I think this is a nice way to do it for the first Challenger.
It's like preliminary almost, right? It's giving the teams, they got the money to play for, but then you understand what they're playing for on top of that.
Yeah.
And it's not like, it avoids the argument of like almost the unnecessary games.
Yeah.
You kind of blue balling the viewers, though, for a while, because Challenger 1 doesn't have the climax. You don't get to see who the best is for Challenger 1. You have to wait until Challenger 2 for that. But that's,
I think,
is that okay?
My
I think
argument
that's
for
okay.
this is, it's pretty clear that Riot do not care to get eyes on Challenger 1. In terms of like the actual marketing for it, people have been saying, well, they've been advertising it on their Twitter and they've been advertising it here, there, and everywhere, but they haven't really been. There's been no marketing push towards the esports. There's been no like in-game stuff. It's been quite laissez-faire when it comes to the kind of like trying to get casual people to watch. And I think that's because Challenger 1 is this kind of like, the way they're looking at it is like the very preliminary tournament that's going to be feeding into what they want to get eyes onto, which is going to be the Challengers final probably, the Masters event, which is going to be in March. And that's where they want the eyes to be coalescing onto.
Yeah.
I like this format though. For
Yeah,
the first Challenger,
I don't hate it.
As a preliminary format, I think it's pretty nice.
But you wouldn't want it beyond this, right? Like just the first Challenger. Like I wouldn't want this beyond the first Challenger.
Yeah, it's just for the first one, because then you avoid the seeding, and then for the second one, you can play out the bracket.
It is really weird that in these groups for the main event, they've got BO1s for the upper bracket, and then and then it's a BO3 when you are getting about to be eliminated.
But that's the better way of doing it, is to have a BO3 once it's an elimination game. The elimination games are way more important. Now, when you have a week until you play the conclusion of a group stage, why not have it all be BO3?
Yeah, like, I don't understand. I don't really understand the delay between the games. I don't know what.
I also think some of this marketing stuff, it's maybe not so much on Riot as it is just, once again, we're still dealing with just separate TOs doing separate TO things. Like North America, there's way more eyeballs on it, just because like that's just how they're designing it, right? While Brazil, they're like, okay, Game Landers Furia, you're meeting up in the second round of our 300,000 million team intra tournament for some reason, and then we have Europe where they're just once again saying, okay, total media silence, we're blacking out the cities. It's like German air raids again in World War II. Just everyone go dark. Everyone just go dark again. Can't see it. Can't see the games. Don't watch them.
Yeah. Well, Europe has a 512 team bracket that's all BO1s until the round of 32.
Like actually mental.
Yeah,
they must be getting the same
co-streams and no co-streams. You're not allowed to
no co-streams.
Yeah, and you're not allowed to co-stream.
Well, you take away viewers then if you co-stream.
Well,
presumably it's down to the TOs.
They've actually, well, the co-streaming thing isn't. The co-streaming thing is apparently, well, actually that might be down to the TOs, but they've said that the co-streaming thing, they would like to have them, but because they have to navigate like 30 different countries' rules when it comes to like how the sponsors want to be presented on stream, and I don't even know what the legality stuff would even include, but that is apparently the stumbling block for why they implement it. It's not because they don't want to, it's because when it's in North America, it's one country. It's easier to do that kind of stuff. I don't even know what specifics would be relevant when it comes to that.
Why doesn't Europe just become one country?
Agreed. Well,
why don't they just become one?
Yeah.
Well, with some of the Brazilian games, I don't know if people have been catching up on them or watching some of them, but if you haven't been, still you're missing out, because
it's a lot of fun.
You don't even have to watch the games. Go to the Twitch clips, just watch the clips. You'll find entertainment value. Your brain will be satisfied with the images you were seeing on the screen. There are cool things happening, stimuli. It's exciting.
Such a robotic way to advertise. It's like, yes, the stimulus is very pleasing to my neurons as I watch it.
It's interesting.
Kurt, I don't know if you want to just find some clips here, but there's some asinine shit happening in these games. This game in particular, this Fusion Slick game was ridiculous. There were two clutches in this that were ridiculous, Kurt. I don't know if you can find them. There's one from Dragonite and one from Physic. I mean, just the shit that's happening in this game is just crazy.
Yeah.
But this is the constant with Brazil. It is just entertainment value. So I mean,
It's not clean. It's not going to be the cleanest Valorant in the world, but I think people aren't interested in that anyway, given that NA is the most popular region.
It's
so
NA on crack.
It is. It's like really mechanically skilled players just creating chaos.
You talk about mechanically skilled as well. The teams that we would have ranked as the top 2 teams, or maybe I suppose top 3 teams coming in, like Pain, Gamelanders, and Vorax Fusion. And the teams that have actually had the most success are the new super teams, Furia and Vikings.
Yeah.
Like, they've been battering their way through the tournament so far. And I mean, how much more mechanically skilled could this region get? They're just coalescing super teams together to try and push that as their way through.
Yeah.
That's wild.
We haven't seen a lot of the Furia team yet, unfortunately, because
they only had one game broadcast.
But that one game that was broadcast, you can see it. It's just like, oh yes, the skill. It is just ridiculous. I mean, on the first half, they just plowed those poor Galaxy carrots. with just absurd individual skill. Yeah.
With the Spectre, bro.
Sorry, there are like 3 clutches from this game. They're ridiculous. I forgot about that one. I don't know if you can find the other 2, Kurt. The one from Dragonite, it's on B. It is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It is so silly.
It's a super fun region.
I mean,
fun.
I just can't recommend enough for people to watch it. It's just crazy. Every game loses.
Or at least,
final
if you are going to watch it, Challenges Finals, like when we actually get the
big
Challenges 2 as well.
Or Challenges 2,
Yeah.
When the teams are playing for a bit more.
Though I will say that Furia Slick game should be really good. That's another team. I think it's called Slick, right?
Yeah, Slick.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not sure.
They're just another team that's an amalgamation of players from every team. They somehow managed to just pluck one player from every other, just like one guy from Team 1, one from Falco, one from X-Vikings. Like, just they've somehow taken one guy from every team and put together another really good team. But yeah,
Is this it?
I don't know. What are we looking at here?
God.
This is a judge play.
A judge play.
The 2-piece, the Hunter's
Yeah,
Fury,
this wouldn't be it
okay.
because this is A site and it happens on B. What Wyatt's talking about.
Is there a way to check things that you clipped on the Twitch?
Oh,
mobile
okay.
app?
I don't know.
Because
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's
I
that's
clipped
fun.
2 of them, but yeah, they're on Valorant BR. Yeah.
Yeah, this region's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it. It's cool to watch, and it just makes me even more excited for when the regions match up. Yeah, at the end, because the styles of the regions are so different. I mean, Brazil and Korea could not be more different if they tried. If they were deliberately watching each other's VODs and going, we're going to pick the exact opposite style, they could not get more polar opposite to each other. And watching them battle at LAN with North America and Europe is just going to be crazy.
So interesting.
What is the style of Valorant that's gonna win? Is it the more puggy, loose stuff, which is all based around like individual mechanics? Is it the rigorous tactical style of teams like SUMN and Vision Strikers? Like, what is the best style of Valorant at the moment? I don't know.
It might just be.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
It might be stylistic, You never
could,
know.
yeah.
Could
Yeah.
just be just like a rotation of different regions being one better than the other.
Yeah.
So you get this weird love triangle every LAN event where you're like, which team will run into which team, and it all comes down to a lot of different stuff.
every time you watch a top Brazilian team, I can just always see the future where the international LAN happens and they just plow one of these
Or
tournaments.
just an unexpected win as well coming out from Brazil. But hopefully that won't happen because we are singing their praises since 2016. We've just been singing the praises of Brazil, I feel like, as early as possible.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You
Maybe
think
I'm putting too much credit on our popularity scene, but I feel like we have been hopefully setting the stage for Brazil to eventually be not taken as like an unexpected victory at the
They
event.
still won't.
You look at like LG winning the recent games, where a lot of it is around like how skilled the LG players are, how well they trade off each other, and their overwhelming ability within the server to beat out the other teams, even if their utility usage isn't quite as thorough. Their just fundamentals are really sound. Brazil's got that in spades. I mean, the skill is there, but also they're so fast to be able to back each other up. And that is just brutal fundamental ability, which absolutely could win against any of the top teams, I think. It's not consistent, but it's incredibly good.
What's next up? I thought we were waiting for a clip.
If you...
Oh, you couldn't find it?
Never mind.
We had the judge clip. That's good.
We did have the judge clip.
All right,
that shows the brutal tempo.
I am excited for Brazil, but the region that makes me coom is always Europe.
Yeah. What a fucking terrible segue.
I never want. Yeah.
What's a bad segue about that? That sounds really good. This sounds like
because he just said the region that makes me coom.
You should have. did you see his little nasty face when he said that? Did you say
the best? This is the best intro for Europe possible because it's all just fucked. It's fucked up, and that was a fucked up intro. So let's go to that.
Avast, you didn't look him in the eyes like I did when he just glanced over and said,
I didn't feel the heat radiating off his face like a stove top. I didn't see that.
It's just disgusting.
Jesus.
Bren, take us away.
Yeah, the EU Red Bull Homeground tournament kicked off, and it's probably one of the best tournaments we've seen yet.
I would say this is the best European tournament outside of First Strike. And even First Strike was like one weekend of play, right? Where we didn't really know what to expect. My anticipation for this and the fact that it was so fresh off the back of First Strike made this probably the tournament that I've enjoyed watching the most out of Europe.
Yeah.
Because there were questions about certain teams.
We didn't know how good Liquid was going to be. We didn't know.
There were incredible BO5 series between many of the different teams as well. I mean, the semi-final SUMN Liquid and the final G2 Liquid are two of the best series that you will ever watch in the history of European Valorant so far. And on top of that as well, the meta has changed pretty significantly. I wanted to start here because while North America has tweaked a little bit with what they're playing, like a little bit more Brim being played and that kind of stuff, even if you remove all of the open qualifiers, so you get rid of all of the bottom teams, the meta is still shifted significantly here, where you're seeing a lot of Brimstone being played, a lot of Viper being played, some Reyna now being played for some of the first times in Europe.
Yeah, thanks to Zeke.
Yeah, some drops in Cypher gameplay and steps up in terms of the Killjoy, and a lot of Sage returning to the forefront of the meta.
I mean, look at the bottom at Icebox that we were seeing picked and compare it to NA. 80% Sova, 80% Jett. Okay, we've seen that. 70% Killjoy, 77% Sage on Icebox.
And
you can understand why.
Icebox.
And what was that for Viper? It was like 63% or something, wasn't it? Or maybe
73 for
73.
Viper. You can understand why though if you watch the Icebox in Europe games, because they've elevated. I could tell. I was watching it and I was like, you can tell that there has been an evolution through scrims that we haven't seen of the way they've been playing Icebox, and like they have come to this conclusion, and it has led to this point where Sage is almost an insta pick, Viper is almost like a mirror between both teams on Icebox, and that is the de facto way to play Icebox. A definite higher understanding of how to play that map compared to any other region it seems so far.
Totally
and it makes a lot of sense when you watch them play it too, like especially like on A side and like using the Viper to like lock down the huge angles for B, like it makes a ton of sense the way
make the map more digestible.
They do, yeah. And the Sage walls have enormous value on attack and defense.
Ridiculous value.
Yeah, and then the slows as well. Just make it...
Yeah, they're so good.
It's oppressive playing against the slow orbs. They lock off certain areas and turn the 50-50s into, if you decide to swing or you're playing on that angle that we slow, you're dead. You're dead, and you're not even getting the first pick.
I mean, what's funny about the way the map is playing is that all of the complaints, all the discussion around Icebox from the beginning of it being included in the game is around how many angles there are. You can get peeked from so many places. Who would have thought that the meta would be playing agents that obstruct angles with walls?
I
mean, it shouldn't be shocking, really, at all, right? But yet it's Sage. It's like,
I like the concept,
mind-blowing, but it's so obvious.
Of taking the map design into your own hands by just building a wall in the tunnel, the mid-tube, so you don't have to worry about kitchen really at all. You don't have to worry about that particular section of the map, or just like partitioning off the map, just building a wall here.
Yeah,
like some interior design.
Whenever they push A, There's a slow orb towards the back, the angle that people, because in North America, people will still hold kind of, if you imagine site A from the defender's perspective, they hold the bottom left so that they can swing on that bottom
And
left
just get a
angle
pick
as they
almost
come in.
every time.
Yeah, and they get a pick almost every time. Like Zombs will hold there, Paranoia goes down, swings out, tries to get a pick. In Europe, that area is slow orbed every single round on attack. If you're hitting A, there's a slow orb there, you can't swing. And then there's a wall goes up either right in front of that or it goes on the other side. And you've turned... The retakers now have to funnel through one side of the map. It makes it way more predictable where they're coming from. You're turning the 50-50 angles and you're going, no, actually, I'll build a wall there. And actually, it's not. There's only one way into this site now.
And the Viper's just and the way they use Viper on B, like they lock down the site plant, like the default site plant that everyone tries to do all the time, like so hard with the mollies and the smoke. It makes it impossible to try to get there and go for it. Like, it's just so good how they use the utility to lock out these like really awful obtuse angles that are originally there.
Yeah. I mean, I was saying, I think that right now Europe is definitely leading the meta on Icebox from what I've seen.
That's what I was going to say, but also I want to give a shout out to TSM because TSM are the only North American team that I've seen that actually look like they have a great grasp of how to play. A lot of the other NA teams are just kind of run it A, run it B, one round will lurk down mid. TSM are the only team that I've seen successfully slow play and really mess with the rotations of the defenders and have extremely good Icebox performances. But yeah, I would say G2 and Liquid are the two best Icebox teams in the world at the moment.
Absolutely.
I mean, they've cracked the code in some sense.
I think you're going to see a lot of the NA teams and teams around the world just start to copy the comps and the play on the map.
They should.
One of the most interesting things for me, which you have pretty much not seen up to this point, because obviously no EU games being played or streamed, is the like battle for map control that you were seeing on Icebox on B, which there's no fight for map control on any Icebox we've seen up until this point.
Yeah.
But all of the map control battling happened at B with the double Viper using the Sage utility. I mean, it was actually ridiculous to witness some of the rounds where you would just see 5 players on one side of their wall, 5 players on the side of the other wall, defending and attacking, just lobbing utility at each other, attempting to plant in the default spot at all costs, fucking mollies everywhere. It's just smoke's going down. It's just chaos. But it's very interesting. I mean, that is where, at least at the moment, the battle for map control is gone. And also, the defaults in EU are so much, specifically, again, with like G2 Liquid, but they're so much more well thought out than the defaults in NA. There is actual pressure around the map. They're like, I love how G2 would, they would send the 3 guys, like they would send the Sage and the Viper up towards the B site to get some map control. They'd have Pit watching in mid. Zeke would lurk around towards A. Like, they would actually have a proactive default where they were fighting for some map control at B. And then sometimes they would hit the site and execute, try to get the default plant put down the wall, or they would rotate back. I mean, play the game.
Yeah,
they would play the game with a depth past running to one site and then running to the other side.
But what I love about the G2 and Liquid play on Icebox as well is that by playing your 3 players, which for G2 is they have their Sage, they have their Sova, and then they have the Jett normally play towards the green entrance to B. Then they have their Viper potentially lurking up tube if they manage to kind of pull the rotators over to B. And then they have Zeke on Reyna lurking in A. And if they are successful in finding a pick based off their map control on B, they'll maybe transition into hitting the site, and Pith and Zeke will then become backstabbers and lurkers in the post plan. And if they're not successful, then they rely on Pith to find a timing to walk up tube, or Zeke to find a timing to walk into A. And once the defender rotations are so long that if you put enough pressure on B, you drag players out of mid and out of kitchen and out of A. And it creates space for Pith and Zeke to walk into A or walk into kitchen. And then you can return to them at the end of the round, and you can get a free plant on A, or you can get a rotation into A where Pith is now in the tube ready to backstab people there. And it's so well thought out, and they get value out of that way more than just zug, we attack one site.
Yeah.
It's a true breaking point of the map.
It is. And I love within the meta too, the usage of Viper is so good in drawing out enemy utility. The way that both those teams were using the Viper utility over on B throughout different points in the round to draw out defender utility to very late points in the round where they would finally execute and try to get the plant. All throughout the round, this is why Viper is viable on some of these maps, in my opinion. It's not just the actual utility and what it does. It's that it's recurring, and you can continuously use it to just suck more utility out of the enemy team. And like and
the defenders always have to respect it. They always have to leave at least a player there because you could be just walking up behind it.
Yeah, so the meta of using the Viper utility recurring throughout the round to suck utility out of the defending team, and then eventually deciding to hit that site or rotate off and using it as a bait. It's just very interesting. I mean, this is the best Icebox gameplay you're going to witness at this point.
And also, on every other map, I think it's better to run a Viper with another smoker. And on this map, because there's so many things that obstruct your vision anyway, naturally, I think solo Viper is mega viable. It's the only map really where I think it's incredibly viable to run solo Viper.
And Sage is just so good today.
I think it is the Sage though. Somebody asked me that. They were like, "Why?" Sorry for interrupting, Avast. I was just going to say that.
No, I was just agreeing with Wyatt.
Yeah, someone was asking me like, why are they running solo Viper? Why not run another smoker? If especially somebody said, why not run Brimstone? Because so much of the team strategy seems to revolve with the retake or the post plant scenarios is using the mollies to clear out angles or just delay the bomb.
Yeah, that's how Liquid plays for sure. They play with like the Killjoy molly,
but also
and
North
Viper
American
molly.
teams as well, right? Like the concept of like, why not play with as many Molotovs as possible?
Sure.
But doing that, you remove one of the key pieces in your team. You remove like a Sova or a Sage, and every piece is integral to the point that we've got to in Europe, at least, with the meta that's developed between these two teams, at least between G2 and Liquid, to get to this point where if you remove one of those pieces, the overall crux of their plan, the overall game plan for how they approach A and B, kind of just falls apart.
Yeah,
because it's all integral to try and essentially break either of those sites.
And there's just so much geometry to use anyways. Sorry, Wyatt, do it again.
Nope.
No?
This is your time to shine.
My time.
Make that goddamn point.
I was just piggybacking off of Bren. It's just like the geometry of Icebox in particular, on really every point anyways, it's like because of how you can split the map so easily with just Viper and how you do it, and how having a molly or a slow from the Sage means that you can clear a corner that's where you're going to get the majority of your picks, like when you're anchoring a site. It just makes smokes a lot less valuable for other portions of the map because of how the geometry of the map already is. Like they're just the angles aren't super, super long more often than not. You're dealing with just like with a much more of like a tunnel type of system almost, where like you're having to deal with like a myriad of different angles all coming together at once versus just long sight lines. So I feel like this is where Europe has shined, I think, at times, and it really shows the difference between, like, we can sit here now and be like, this is genius, right? This is genius. It's such a good idea, right? But were any of us really proposing too hard for, at the very least, like Viper? Like maybe, I think we talked about Sage, but maybe Viper. Like, it's tough for us to, that's like the benefit of like where these players and like having really good game sense comes into play, right? Because it's really hard to sometimes break out of like, what were you thinking about the meta before? What were you thinking about how we approach the site to just say like, wait, what if we just make a new site? What if we just make a new site with Sage walls and Viper walls?
With blackjack and hookers.
Exactly. Well, I was going to avoid that part, but yeah, sure.
I mean, listen, if you're talking geometry, angles, protractors, there's no agent to better take care of those than Sova, you know? Bouncing arrows around, angles, and I think artists showed how good Sova is on this map. I think there was this theory that Sova would not be good on this map, and I think a lot of people subscribe to it because of the map being indoors and closed off on the A side, and there's not... I mean, I think that's out the window. I think you get mega value off the drone on this map, and artists showed how many and how effective the shock dart lineups can be on this map. He's leveled up his shock dart.
He really has. It sounds silly to say that, but he's just getting so much value with it. His shock darts were incredible, actually.
Like there was a crucial round towards the end of the game where G2 on attack, they put down the Sage slow on the A site orb, and there's just two shock darts landing at the feet of Scream, who's trying to get the orb. And there were just so many crucial moments with the shock darts, And I mean, you know, I think the recon, yeah, it doesn't get as much value on A or B for that matter. It's tough to get mega value as you see 3 people light up from 1 recon on the screen. But I think typically there's just so many angles. It's hard to get really good recons because it's easy to get out of the way of them. But I think that, yeah, the drone is mega valuable. It's super good for retakes. Yeah, I think that I actually, we were saying this when we were watching this game the other day, Josh. I think that this G2 comp is actually the comp on this map right now.
Yeah, I can't think of a better one.
I think and they did lose this game. So, you know, you say that not like if you run this comp, you will literally never lose. But I think that in terms of meta picks, I think it is the best comp. Now, is the Raze also really good? Yeah. Like if you were tier listing this, I think Raze would still be like A tier on this map.
Sure.
I still think Killjoy would be A tier on this map. So this is marginal. It's not, again, it's not, you literally pick this, you will win. But I think that the picks that G2 had are just pretty ideal for the map at the moment.
The other thing that I wanted to mention when it came to the meta changes that we've seen in EU recently is that people have started integrating Sky. And this is also the case in North America with Crashies playing a lot of Sky too, and Cutler playing a lot of Sky as well. But in Europe also, we've seen a lot of people, like Soulcast, for example, start to play the Sky in very creative ways when it comes to these various maps. And it feels like people have finally now, 3 months after she's been released, figured out how to get value from her in team compositions at the pro level. And that's really interesting to me that it's been like 3 months before this has happened, because I'm trying to keep track of this for the future to see what kind of patterns develop for new agents. When do they get mastered? Because the other thing that springs to mind as well is this is the first, I was kind of mind blown by this, but this is the first tournament where we've seen people using shock darts to counter Killjoy ultimates.
Yeah.
And those lineups are crazy simple. They should have been figured out months ago. It's been 6 months since Killjoy was released. The same lockdown positions are used every time on Ascent and Haven on A for the retake. And the shock dart lineups have only now started being used in pro tournaments. 6 months later. It's very slow, ponderous development. And it's just interesting to keep track of kind of how fast the scene develops new ideas and pushes things forward.
I want to move the conversation over towards G2 overall as a team, because they had their first straight loss. They had a bit of a downward turn, but overall, over the course of 2020, G2, I think it's hard to argue against them being the best team in Europe based off of the dominance they had. And now they've got Zeke in and Paddy Tack as well. And now we're starting to see this team really come together. I mean, what were your general impressions of G2 from the course of this tournament here? Is this a team that's now back to stay with these additions?
I mean, look, I think Zeke adds even more firepower to the team.
Yeah.
He's crazy good.
He's just a sick individual player. I think he really shines on defense when you put him in the situations where his sight is getting hit. He's in a 1vx. He is going to pop off. He had some great play on the Reyna, the very, very rare EU Reyna. He just had... He had great moments. I think,
which I like on Icebox, but they also have started playing it on Ascent. And that is where I'm having concerns with G2. Is that when I watch their Ascent gameplay and when I watch their play on Split as well, particularly, even though they're having a huge amount of success, it feels like more of the same G2 where they're playing just reacting to their opponents. They don't look like they're tactically better than they were before. They look like they arguably have more skill. Yeah. I mean, David P was an incredible player and he's really skilled, but Zeke is probably even more skilled than that.
Yeah.
But it's not like under Mixwell's IGLing, they're playing tactically genius plays. I would argue that they maybe are when it comes to Icebox, but not on any of the other maps. It's still reacting to their opponents. It's still trying to find weaknesses of their opponents and exploit them as much as possible. They're not playing their own game. They're playing to kind of feel out their opponents and then beat them at their game, which is how G2 were getting their successes all year long. It's not a bad thing, but it's nothing new. Yeah. It doesn't feel like G2 have turned over a new leaf. It feels like the same thing, and they're still they're still pushing for information. They're still facing and taking aim duels a lot. Against that's what lost them the series against Heretics, was Paditek and David P pushing for info in the mid round. And Paditek continues to do that every round. And it was getting punished sometimes, but it was mostly working. And that's not new. It just, they weren't playing against a team that can punish that.
Yeah.
Because Paditek was either winning his duels, or Liquid's defaults are not as good as a team like Heretics.
They were getting away with a lot on defense. Paditek was just pushing up every round. I mean, if he didn't hear someone early in the round towards his site, he would just drop a smoke and walk through it. And he was
that
doing
happened
it
on Split. That happened on Haven.
Yeah, he was doing it constantly. Yeah, the Liquid defaults were just not thorough enough for the aggression that G2 like to have individually when they're on defense. But yeah, I mean, G2 was more of the same on all the non-Icebox maps. Incredible reactive play, excellent ability to play off each other. Their trading is just phenomenal. They're always in the perfect position to take every duel in the best position and then have the guy for follow-up. They just play an immaculate, reactive, free-flowing game still. They just run around on Split in their little clump. They're just playing the clump style. Seriously. It's just a clump of them. They're just running up through mid. They run into ropes. They find one pick. They leave one guy in A heaven, and then the clump returns to mid. The clump goes to B heaven, and they just trade. On attack, it's just the clump, and it goes around. It trades perfectly, perfect team play. The clump is just it's just a black hole that sucks you in around the map, and then once in a while,
is that a bad thing, right? I mean, like, it's early in their team's life cycle, right? And so there's no in this new roster iteration's life cycle, so there's no guarantee this is where we're gonna stay. And also, if G2 has just added another fragger alongside Mixwell that's more flexible, and they can put him on more duelists, right? That they couldn't really do with David P. And they just play the same thing they were great at, but now they have more flexibility and more fragging. Like, is that a bad thing? Like,
no,
inherently, like, they might not ever be the most tactically deep team ever. We'll see how that changes for them as we go into the future. But if they're like the perfect, like, natural flow state homeostasis team, right? Like, if they're like just the perfect, like, what's that? The laminar flow, you know? Like, if that's them of Valorant, then that's not inherently bad, honestly.
No,
because that could still mean you can win tournaments, be one of the best teams, if not the best team in the world. It's just, you may not ever be the most tactically deep, but if you just understand Valorant at its most fundamental level, and everyone is really, really good at what they do, and now they've added extra fragging and someone that's more flexible, I kind of feel like you don't necessarily have to evolve. You just have to make sure that you don't ever fall below what your mastery is. You sort of have to maintain that level, because if you ever fall below it, then you're screwed. You know? But at that point, I don't necessarily know if they have to be the most tactically, like, perfectly deep, because that's not necessarily what their style is.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just stylistic.
They've lent into their style even harder than they have done in the past. And I'm interested to see whether the really smart tactics, or actually it's not really tactics, it's strategy. It's like an overall game plan when it comes to Icebox. I'm interested to see whether that develops onto the other maps, just given more time with this roster.
Yeah.
My only concern is that their same weaknesses from before are going to be present again, at least in the short term, on this roster, which is that if they play against a team like Heretics, which on attack is really slow and just holds waiting for G2's aggression, if Heretics win those aim duels, they will win against G2, right? G2 are still going to push with Paditek out of A main on Split. We're watching them play right now. That's what they did when they played defense. If they do that against Para is probably going to kill Paditek on a lot of the rounds, and it seems like Paditek will struggle to adjust, and they might still lose. That might end up just being, though, that G2's boogie team is Heretics. And they might win, I don't know, still 80% of tournaments if Heretics don't make it to the finals in order to beat them. That's something you see a lot in CS as well, where teams with different styles, they might beat everybody other than one team that just has the perfect style to counter them. It's not necessarily a terrible thing, but I did think that with the addition of Zeke, who was IGL'd for previous teams, that they were trying to be a more well-rounded team. And I wouldn't really say that G2 have become more well-rounded. They might have become more flexible. I think that's very fair to say. but they're still playing that one style. They're doing it incredibly well, but they haven't really pushed outside their comfort zone yet.
Yeah. I'd agree, but I feel like there's always been this, like, I feel like at the end of the day, when it comes to like esports in general, no matter the game, 95% of the game happens at like the fundamental level and like how you react to a play. And this just because, you know, your plans fall apart sometimes. Like you lose a pick early, you fall behind your econ. Like, you know, there's a million things that can go wrong. Someone's just not making the best calls that day or just not hitting their shots. So the majority of all of every game is done at your base level decision making for every player. And like for Valorant, that would be like, you know, how you're trading well, you know, how are you using your utility, how are you reacting or setting up a micro play. And G2 still just does that the best, really. Yeah. Like out of every team. And with the addition of Zeke, yes, they haven't become more well-rounded yet, but they become more flexible to just keep doing what the TU need to do almost all the time to be the best. That they are doing everything they need to do that across every game, any title, that they need to win the most games. And they've just gotten more flexible doing it.
Yeah. It's I do think had this tournament included Heretics and potentially FPX, it could have been a different outcome. Yeah. You know, it
really could have been.
It's very hard to say whether it would have been, but it definitely could have been.
Is so wacky.
Yeah, that trip really is crazy. It's like on the roof.
Yeah.
But that just makes me even more excited for challenges, honestly.
Yeah,
it's like seeing how these teams stack up because you've got 5 teams in Europe that are all breathing down each other's necks. I mean, you could see SUMN winning a tournament. You could see Liquid genuinely winning a tournament. They were a map away from doing it there. You could see G2 easily winning a tournament. You could see Heretics easily winning another tournament. You could see a bounce back from FPX with Dimisek winning a tournament. That's 5 teams there. All of them could win at any point just based on who's feeling it on the day. And then you also have NIP who are on the come up, who look really dangerous too.
I'm excited about the new NIP roster. I definitely am. If we want to talk about Liquid, though.
I want to talk about Liquid because
I know Bren wants to talk about
Liquid.
But I will say,
fucking vindication.
I mean, this is the best performance Liquid have had in a tournament yet, right?
Yep.
It has to be.
It is. Absolutely.
And genuinely, I think they absolutely, you're right. They can win a tournament. They were on the cusp of winning this tournament. I think that the issue plaguing them right now is map pool. When they work out their bind, and I think that their split needs some work as well, but especially bind. Bind might be I don't know if there's stats on this on VLR or something. I wouldn't be surprised if bind was the most played map in competitive Valorant so far. Would not surprise me.
Probably.
And I think that at the moment, it's probably their poorest map.
It is definitely their poorest map.
I say probably.
Definitely. It's 100% at the bottom of their map pool. Yeah, it's like Ascent for SUMN. It's like the map that if they go to it, they're guaranteed a loss.
Yeah, and if you want to be like, I don't know. I was going to do a dumb CS comparison, but I won't. It's like Dust 2, but shut up, Wyatt. But Bind is a very crucial map to be good on, and they are just absolutely lost in the sauce. Yeah. So I think that is the main issue plaguing them. And then, their split attack was just, they were in the zug zone.
Overall, I want to address the storylines, though, coming into it.
Yeah, sure.
Because Liquid were... I'm telling you, I was singing their praises.
Yep.
And fucking First Strike rolls around. I'm like, this is the tournament where they're really going to be proving themselves. And they go up against Heretics, the winners of the tournament. And this is a great showcase of how the people can be so wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
Just the overall narrative that was spreading that, this team needed to be blown up. Massive changes needed to be made. Soulcast needed to be cut. And overall, I mean, I would argue, I don't know if you guys agree with me, that Liquid haven't overly changed their style too much. They've still been kind of adhering to the same sort of game plan when it comes to the development of the team.
Yeah, they added like one new look, which is Soulcast playing the Sky,
right,
and Link moving over to like Raze when he plays on Bind, and Link was playing the Sage on Haven with Soulcast playing Sky. That was new, but
the overall philosophy of like how they play the game,
they were still playing the same stuff.
But this showcase, again, like we were saying, like there are so many competitive teams in EU, and this is... I'm just happy that Liquid have actually showcased that they have been good, because this is, I think, the best result since the team's inception. Maybe there was a tournament early on. I can't remember what the hell it was called. There was a very early EU tournament when Liquid first formed that they came second in, but the format wasn't particularly great. It was like BO1s, and then BO3s later. But this is a recent showcase of skill where finally there's something on the board. You go to the Liquipedia page and it's perceivable. You can see that this is a top team. They just needed an opportunity to shine the right circumstances for it to show up.
Yeah.
And this was the best example of it. I mean, they played 2 incredibly close games against 2 of the best teams in EU right now, SUMN and G2, and it was fucking incredible. Both the series were so good,
amazing.
So good. Yeah, I'm just incredibly pleased. I really am.
Yeah, what I am a big fan of with Liquid is that Soulcast had extremely good individual performance when it came to the Raze, but also he was getting big value on the Sky when he was playing that, especially on the Haven. Okay, Bind, they're just a mess, whatever, but the Haven performances when he's playing Sky were really good, and his Raze performances were just immediately back to him being excellent again, it was just a blip first strike. He was excellent before first strike on the Raze, and he's excellent now on the Raze. Yeah. And first strike was just a mess of him being not being great on the Sova though as well. Is another part to that. Is that his Phoenix looks really good, his Raze looks excellent, his Sky now is also very good. The Sova was a bit of a failed experiment, I would say. It's not really Soulcast's hero, but he bounced back individually to a high level. The thing that I love seeing, though, as well, is Link back on the Sage. Yeah. Boy, oh boy, it is so fun to watch Link play Sage. On Icebox, excellent, and on Haven, huge impact.
His utility, the impact of the utility when he is on Sage is just astronomical. It's actually...
There were so many pushes where they just try to push down long, and he just hit them and okay, we can't go in here anymore. Time to go back up. Time to leave. And they just left.
G2 were desperately trying to go A. Desperately. And the utility from Link just shut them down over and over.
It's just Link and Soulcast playing that.
Yeah, Link and Soulcast's duo on A was just shutting G2 down.
And if anyone's interested in looking at the VOD, look at how they use the flashes to gather information for Link to get the timing for his utility.
I mean, you can see it right there. He was about to set it up right here in this clip. He was getting ready to set it up.
They'll flash. Look, they flash. They know that there's people there, and now the wall comes up because they know that there's people there. So it gives them the timing to maximize this value. I mean, that's a bit of a troll flash, but generally speaking, it was devastating for them to push into this.
Just
look at this cucking, this actual cucking.
Look at how the Sage utility just absolutely breaks this push in half. These players in short are absolutely useless, and the guys in long are just fighting a 2v3 on site.
G2's best asset is their timing and their support of their teammates, and they literally... Zeke could not support Ardis there because he was in a slow orb, and he's had to battle through a wall, and he's worried about being flashed all the time, and they've already got the information that they're there, and it's a really nice setup.
I think it is no coincidence, I feel, that the maps Liquid won were the maps where they were getting giga value out of Link's Sage. There is a correlation there. When he is on Sage, he's just so good. I mean, Scream was great throughout the series as well, and Soulcast, I agree. When he's on the Raze, he really shows up. He had a good performance on this map as well with this guy. I mean, there are so many positives for Liquid coming out of this. Genuinely.
Interesting as well that there was a narrative that Scream would be kind of hardcore opping now as well, because people were leaking it a little bit from Scrims. I think Mixwell was talking about it on his stream where he said, it's always surprising to me seeing Scream with an op, and then it's even more surprising when he kills me with the op, I think was the quote from Mixwell. But Scream did very little opping. I mean, there were maybe 10 rounds in all of the 10 maps in the BO5 where he opt. Maybe that's a slight underestimate, but it really wasn't that much. And a lot of people were like, oh, it doesn't make any sense to put Scream on the op. It's a marginal amount. And
it could just be a Scrim experiments there. I feel like it's just Scrim experiments of let's try,
and also, he's playing
Jett.
He's playing Jett. Sometimes you op.
There's no team that really experiments more, I feel like, than Liquid as well. They are always tinkering with just what they want to run in terms of compositions and play styles as well. Like the experiment with what was his name from Astralis?
Yugi.
Yeah, Yugi.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it is interesting. I mean,
just running it as like an opping play style, just to experiment again, just changing up the way it plays. So there's with Liquid especially, I don't know if you can read into the scrim bucks as much. But yeah,
they definitely need to hit the drawing board again when it comes to bind. Like, that map is a joke for them. It's just they don't understand how to hold B at all on the defense.
Yeah.
And their attacking rounds, actually across a lot of maps, are way too readable. Especially when they're playing against G2, because G2 love to push for information. Because Liquid are the kind of team that gathers up on attack. They don't run very spread wide defaults. They just give way too much information to G2. They're actually, G2 knew exactly where they were going on almost all of Liquid's attacking halves. And then Liquid were clawing it back on defense. The Icebox was the lone exception to that rule.
Yeah, split. I think the split map was just a great example of that. If Paditech on A didn't hear utility immediately, you would put the smoke, walk through it. There was never anyone there. And then they would just
and then
rotate
they just
B,
they all
and they would
rotate
hit
B.
B. Oh, whoops, we're running into 5 people again, and they would all die. It happened a few times. So, but yeah, again, Liquid can absolutely win tournaments if they fix their bind, and if they. I think
I would like them to fix their split more than their bind. Like, bind, throw it away, ban
maybe
it,
that's
whatever.
Their ban. I was gonna. Bind could be their ban because split. They had a pretty good defense. It's really just their attack for me. I think that needed work on split. It just needed to be more dynamic. It was too much clumping up, late hitting sites. The problem with Liquid as well is with some of these site hits, they would give G2 just enough time to rotate over. Like, there was a gentleman's agreement. We're going to all stand outside of main. We're going to let you guys rotate over so we can have a fair 5v5 on the site, and then they would go. Like, it wasn't like the Renegades burst or something like that where they just are in. It was, we're going to put down the turret in main. We're going to stand around. Anyone going to peek? Peekers? No one would peek. And then they would hit the site. There would be 5 people waiting there already. They just needed to be more dynamic on those attacks. But they're on the cusp.
They need to
run on the cusp.
They need to run good defaults and use the defaults to transition into site hits instead of starting the round with a plan of the site hit and giving G2 all of that information on defense. It's but they are on the verge of making this, they're on the verge of creating a very good map pool for themselves. And they're on an upwards trajectory.
Alongside them is SUMN, another team that's, they didn't make the finals this time around, but in terms of this team, again, a reminder that they're not actually signed. This is a group of unsigned gentlemen.
I don't understand how that's happened as well, by the way. They must have been in discussions with organizations since First Strike. You can't be an org. I just simply refuse to believe that orgs have not been battering their doors down. Like, are someone just holding out for the $1 million negotiation?
It's probably a case of, Bosa said as well on Backchat, right, that some of the individual players had got offers, but they believe in the idea and the concept of the team.
But the team has been the best unsigned team in Valorant for the last 4 months.
Orgs, it happens all the time, though, that orgs want to build their own roster from players they think are good. It happens all the time. This happens in every early game of every early esport, that orgs want to break apart teams, even if they're doing pretty well, and build their own roster. And on top of that, like, Europe is already, it's harder to find orgs in general to give you money. And then when you could find an org that's a good offer that wants to keep you as a team, they'll be like, okay, so we're going to give you some mouse pads and you get some mouses and that's what you're going to get. And then, but you get to stay together as a team, right? Which is, a shit offer. So the reality is that I don't think it's that crazy, because especially since not a single person on SUMN is a big name.
No, they're not.
And that's the thing. An org will be much more likely to invest into something like, it's like the Fish 123 roster, right? There was, they had some names there that they could be like, okay, fine, yeah, we'll throw the bag at you, right? And we'll keep you, and we'll build this roster. But SUMN is not that case, and I don't think that's crazy at all. Honestly, I really don't think that's crazy.
I don't think it's that crazy, but it's just infuriating. It's just sad. I mean, again, I keep bringing up this example when we talked about this before, and I like the team, and I'm happy that some of the players got signed from Moon Raccoons, but like, the community was rallying behind them to get them signed. The lone unsigned good NA team that wasn't even in like the top 12 at the time, and there's everybody's trying to get them signed. Meanwhile, a top 5 team that plays second in First Strike, I mean,
it's crazy.
Doesn't matter.
I wonder if it's also part of how professional their logo and name looks.
So people think they're already signed.
Genuinely, surely.
But that's
I like to believe organizations do
They just look at the logo and they're like, they're already with someone.
That's where
and
you're
they just
wrong.
like walk away.
That is actually where you're
right,
wrong.
because no teams scout or do anything of value.
Seriously, like I wouldn't be surprised if there have been some organizations that do not know. They see the football club and they think it's some niche Scandinavian football team that signed them. Genuinely.
I mean, I have got to admit, when I first saw it, that is what I thought.
I thought it was an org too.
Yeah.
But
you're not in
logo looks
charge of
fucking
hiring
clean as
anyone.
well.
You're not in charge
No,
of building a
I'm gonna sign
team.
them.
Well, yeah, and I quickly rectified that within 3 minutes of Googling. So, yeah, that's it.
I mean, also, you would think, given that there's now at this point, you are seeing a lot of posts of like, how are they not signed? You would think some scout somewhere who looks at Reddit.
Please.
I mean, it's
noticed.
a better investment than any of the new organizations that have just come into the scene.
Oh, for sure.
And there's been rumors about Fnatic picking up this team for ages as well. And it might be just a case like with Liquid, where it took a long time to get the paperwork sorted.
I actually think that's what
and
it
the
is.
sick video made
Yeah,
and
I
all
think-
of that kind of stuff.
I think that whoever they have
These guys might
personality.
already be getting paychecks. They're just not ready to announce.
I actually think that happened.
Yeah.
I think that they've already been signed. I think that it's just not been announced yet. I think that they're cooking up a guild-esque announcement.
But
I think
They're getting in the Viking boats.
yeah, no, I think
Don't,
I think they're cooking up something funny because the players have personality.
They're getting in the red double-decker bus.
Yep. Yeah. But no, genuinely, I actually think they've already been signed. I think that it's just yet
But
to
if
be
you are
announced.
an org, don't let that prevent you from reaching out.
Listen, if they're not signed, email
Fucking
Plat Chat.
sign them, for the
Yeah.
love of God. Because they are still competitive amongst the top teams. I mean, how many times are we going to hit this point across when we're talking about the EU teams, but it is so competitive at the top level?
This game of Bind is...
Oh my god,
okay,
that was such a beautiful Viper setup.
Yes, it
right
was.
there where it hits that. Oh my goodness.
This entire map was one of the most gorgeous maps of Valorant I've ever watched. And it was Liquid trying to come up with answers for SUMN's composition and trying different things. And each time SUMN were like, no, that's too weak. No, your refutation is wrong. We will beat you, we will beat you, we will beat you. And there was nothing that Liquid could do to be able to break through what SUMN was doing to them. It was a gorgeous map of Valorant. It looked like it had been scrimmed for weeks in advance. A key, like, cheese composite, or not cheese even, but like a niche, cool tactic that had come out from SUMN on Bind, which is SUMN's best map. They're arguably the best in Europe at Bind, along with G2. And then Boaster tweets that it's his second ever time playing Brim on Bind. And you're like, all right, well, how are you this tactically deep that you can spring out a strategy that you clearly haven't spent? You might have spent some time theory crafting it, but you haven't spent a number of weeks practicing it. You clearly have more prepared for the actual Challengers event coming up, and yet you still look like you are head and shoulders above the competition when it comes to Bind. I mean, SUMN are just unbelievably skilled on this map.
Yeah, they're.
I want to see them play against G2 because
yeah, I know.
SUMN versus G2 on Bind would be
that hasn't happened yet.
Unbelievably good.
I love it when Josh
crazy
gets into his state of describing a team and it just sounds like BBC's Planet Earth and it's like it's gorgeous. Look at it, it's so beautiful. And then it's just like an orgasmic experience for him. Like I love it.
I really was. I mean, in a state of orgasm watching SUMN play. Okay, their later maps weren't. They started with their best map. All right. Nothing wrong with that. It's your home ground. That makes sense. But it was just beautiful to watch. And it's a similar kind of idea to what they ran during First Strike with the Viper, but a different twist on it. The Viper in the sky combos so well with the flashes through the Viper wall. And then their attacks on A, it's impossible to stop them pushing down short because Lamps is walled off. And they just take showers as part of their default every single round. Yeah. And if you play for retake, they have mollies from their Brim and their Viper to beat you. You're checkmated. You're actually checkmated.
Yeah, they have infinite molly lineups on every map. There is a molly landing on the spike on every map from any angle at any time. Yeah. They're listen. Yeah, their executes.
They're a good team.
They're a very good team, especially on Bind.
Their executes are just different.
Yeah,
they're very different.
Gorgeous. Now, they are also a team, though, that suffers a little bit from a map pool problem, because once Liquid were able to go toe-to-toe with them up to the 5th map, Ascent is just... The problem is, Summon's best map is Liquid's worst. So you don't get punished in that sense, because Summon were going to win no matter what.
Yeah, I mean...
But Ascent is Summon's worst map, and it's like middle of the pack for Liquid. But it's just an insta-win for Liquid because Summon are so poor at it.
Right.
And so the way that these guys' map pools match up is just in large favor of Liquid, because their worst matches up to Summon's best. And that's, that just ends with the overall BO5 series win being heavily in favor there of Liquid. Summon look decent when it comes to Haven and Split, but not quite able to keep up across a BO5 series.
Yeah, I think they needed to win on Split. I think that Summon had a lot of really nice ideas. They had a lot of really great executes, but I think on that map, actually, I think that that was one of the maps where when you're watching, it's just in that map, in that moment of time, there was an individual skill diff. They were kind of getting wrecked.
They got owned by Soulcast on that map, didn't they?
They did. And I think that was kind of the critical factor, because I actually liked how they were playing the map a lot. It was another map where they were really well thought out. Their attack was really well thought out, and then it would just crumble because some of the Liquid players were just popping.
Yeah.
But again, they looked really good. Another team that could absolutely win a tournament.
Yeah. The thing with Summon, though, that I'm a little concerned about is that they don't look like they can win on Icebox. So they've got, when they're coming up against G2 or Liquid, they're always going to lose on Ascent, and against those teams, they're always going to lose on Icebox now, which means you have to win on Haven, which they're good at, and Split, which they're all right at. It puts way more pressure on your middle of the pack maps.
Yeah.
So I think the time is kind of over for them to just have Ascent as their permaban. They really need to bring that up to a point where it's acceptable, at least.
An interesting thinking about the maps in this game. Just lost in my thoughts about it, because the map pool is pretty small. I mean, it's 5 maps.
Yeah,
like that's all we're working with. But it doesn't mean that teams can specialize on all 5 just because there's less of them. You have a set amount of time, but you dedicate that, in proportions to specific maps that you think you're more comfortable with, right? And it's like. It doesn't come down to there's less maps, so everybody should be comfortable on all maps, but it's like it is that allocation of time that each team does that means that it doesn't matter how many maps you have, you're always going to have essentially like one map that you're not comfortable with. Yeah. Really, regardless. I mean, when you hit that 5 mark, it's, they could have 8 maps in the pool, and you might get to the point where there's 2 maps that teams aren't comfortable with. But generally speaking, the depth that you see, I don't think it gets lesson per se. It's like being one of the major criticisms early on, and I'm glad we have 5 maps. But yeah, it's interesting to think about.
Yeah. It's now got to a point actually where teams are starting to develop a real identity. Now that Icebox isn't just a throwaway anymore, there are teams that have really specialized on it. You're starting to see the strategy of having a 5 map pool, of having to force people to play on Icebox and take the win there, and exploiting their map pool weaknesses. It was never really that big of a thing when there was only 4 maps, because you had to like repeat them or ban one, or it was just nonsense, the formats that we had previously. And that didn't really change in First Strike because Icebox was so new that it was just RNG. Like all teams were bad at it. Who the fuck knows?
Shots.
But now that teams are actually starting to be good there, it's the first 2021 has started out with the first real like deep strategy coming into the map pool selection, in my opinion.
I'm interested to see how, as they release more maps, what Riot system is going to be for like maps, much like if it's going to be like CS. I'm assuming it will be, where there's going to be rotations, but like, because you don't want to get into like an Overwatch scenario where there's just so many maps that you have to know how to play, and there's no way to really ever narrow it down. Like, for the most part, like there are some methods been put in place that like it's really hard to be good at a lot of maps because you just have to play so many. So I'm wondering what they're going to do with that as they add more.
I think 7 is the number. You get it to 7 good maps and you're good.
Yeah,
that's really all you need.
Yeah,
you're in a good position, 1 ban each, best of 5.
Yeah. I do. Before we go away from this Red Bull Homeground.
Oh, we got one more team to talk about.
Yeah,
but yeah, go ahead.
I mean, is it NIP?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I wanted to talk about NIP.
Yeah, it's ninjas in pajamas.
I'm actually pretty excited about this NIP roster.
Yeah.
They've come into this tournament as a pretty fresh team, and I think they showed that they could enter that conversation where it could be 6 teams that could genuinely win tournaments.
Yeah.
I think they have an immense amount of skill. I was excited to see JD stepping into this roster.
God damn, JD was good.
Is a freak. JD is really good.
Holy fuck.
I really like this NIP roster they have right now. I mean, they've gone through 1 million players, but I think they've actually, and listen, it hasn't all been good decisions in the past of who they've kept or cut, but I think they've landed on something that can work right now. They have leadership in existence. They have really solid fraggers on the team. They're pretty well-rounded at this point. And I think that they were bringing some interesting ideas to the table as well. I was really enjoying watching their no duelist theory.
Yeah, there's like 2 or 3 maps in the pool where they run no duelists.
Yeah, it was very interesting. I enjoyed watching.
They did it on Icebox. They did it on Icebox, and I think it was the other one was Ascent.
Yeah,
it was Icebox and Ascent. Yeah, they did it on. It's on maps that feels like they're. Actually, no, because Ascent and Icebox really aren't that similar. So I don't know. I was about to say maybe it's a geometry thing, but I don't think it's a geometry thing.
They seem to. It feels like they want to have Kriya be more of an entry player, and he's playing Omen. He only plays Omen. I've never seen him play any other agent at all. But he's the weakest fragger on the team, so it might seem weird to have him as the entry. But when you can trade him out effectively and have him be your aggressive component, and he's able to make space for you, he doesn't need to be hitting all of his shots because you've got guys behind him like JD, for example, who are just bonkers in terms of their individual talent.
And in this tournament as well, I think you got to see how good Rhyme can be as well.
When Rhyme was so good.
Mm-hmm.
When Rhyme is on the Rays, he was.
I think
really
he had
going
one
off.
map in particular where he actually just hard popped. Yeah, it was Bind. Bind, he went off.
Yeah.
He went off.
What does he play on Bind? Is
20...
that where he plays Rays, or is that where he plays Sova? It's Sova, isn't it?
He was playing Rye. He was playing Rays, I should say. On Bind.
Right.
He went 24 and 5 and 6. He went 24, 6 and 5.
I mean,
he went really good.
Crazy.
He was going crazy on Rays. So I think this team has a really good foundation now. I think, again, it's a fresh team, but I think they have good pieces to actually build from. They have a leader. They can get some structure over time as they get more actual practice time in. They have a really solid core of fraggers. I think Chihuahua's really good as well. Very consistent. So I like this team. I think that they actually have a future now. I hope that they stick with this roster and give it some time because I think there's something here.
NIP were a mess before. They were a revolving door of good players that could never fit together. And in some senses, not even that good players. I mean, their previous roster with Hip and Fearoth, just they didn't have the skill to be able to make up for the lack of teamwork and coordination and vision with how they wanted to play.
They've had some good pieces in the past.
Yeah, they've had like Zipan and Yassine playing for them in the past as well, but they always lacked that identity. I think just the addition of Existence here, even though I had my concerns for Existence because he's only ever played Smokes, and that was of course going to be Kriya's role because Kriya doesn't play anything other than Omen, which again is probably still going to be an issue for them at some point in the future, but an easy solve in my opinion. But Existence has gone over to the Breach pretty seamlessly. There was definitely some moments where he's trying to breach flash himself in rather than his team and stuff like that, but they look like they have a solid foundation.
That's very funny with that wall. They have a good foundation. I'm excited for the future of this team, which I've really never been for a NIP roster before. No. I think they've just always had mega consistency issues on an individual level where, their players would just... You would have a map where you would think there was something there, and then the very next map, they just fell off a cliff. But I think that you saw the consistency over this tournament from the individuals. Yeah, I'm excited about this roster. I really am. I think give it a little time, and you could see a really good team.
And get Guild back in here Guild I think need to take Safe off the Sentinel role and actually put him on some kind of thing where he can partner up with Yassine. But if Guild tweak their roles a little bit, they could be back into the contention of this like top 6. And then you've also got FPX and Heretics, who we haven't seen. I mean, you've got so many good teams in Europe right now. It's bubbling and brewing. And then, while the North American teams the top ones seem to be dipping a little bit as the others are coming up, I don't get that same feeling from Europe. It's like the teams at the top have made the necessary changes to try and stay at the top, and everyone's still catching up. It's so competitive.
Yeah, and you still have new teams.
New teams,
Frenzy, Vitality, whatever they're going to be coming up.
Yeah, they look all right as well.
So
yeah. Speaking of new teams,
Alliance
coming in with a little squad. Alliance are an organization that
listen, Bren, I'll set you up. You fucking knock it down.
Spike it down, you know. Alliance coming in. I know them from Dota. That's what I know them. Really big EU organization in the Dota scene. I'm not sure if they have any other teams in other games. They might have some teams in fighting games. I'm not sure. You guys know?
No? I don't know.
I think I'm almost certain Alliance used to have. Let me. I'm gonna go.
Give it a little Google. Yeah.
I'm gonna Google real quick because there was one team in particular I always thought it was very odd that they had a team in here. So let me see if I can find this.
You're not gonna say the name of the title?
No, because I don't want to make myself look like a fool. I don't want to make myself look like a fool before I say it.
Right.
Is the issue. And I can't find it. So go on.
Yeah, so Alliance have made, they've come out, they've come into the scene. We knew they were coming into the scene. Banks is the GM, obviously, we know they were entering. And these are some of the early players that they brought in as well. Definitely taking, I suppose, some of the pieces from some of the teams that have been in flux in EU, coalescing them together.
Yeah.
We now have a pretty interesting mix of players. Now, in terms of how far this team can go, I am not sure.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that this is going to be a great team. With they've got Creation, who was an alright player for Exile. He looked pretty decent. Fearoth was pretty good. Cadaver's pretty unknown as well.
What's so funny?
What's happening?
I really like this.
Kurt's losing his mind at the video. I think.
like this vignette.
What is this? What is this?
Just the text is just so poorly written.
You already know our captain, but now it is time to introduce the rest of the team.
Okay.
I don't know. I think that's very default, isn't it?
I mean, it seems okay-ish.
I just like the vignette a lot.
Yeah.
Nice. It's got that fucking Instagram filler.
I feel like this is like a big intro team. This is like an intro team for Alliance. If they want to like stay in the scene, a lot of orgs do this where there's like, okay, we're gonna build a squad, or we're gonna pick up a squad real fast, and maybe it's going to work out. Otherwise, we kind of just move on. It's like your starter car, when you get your first car and you're driving, that's, but I don't necessarily know if that's the case with the squad, but that's what it feels like to me for when I see this lineup. That's what it feels like.
Some of these players, like Hype, I think was a former player for Rix, but ended up being removed from that roster. I never really noticed him being like an incredible talent on the come up. Fearoth had some decent moments with Hip Hip Hip, and then was just kind of lackluster when he was playing for NIP. But he has kind of IGL'd and done all right in the past, I suppose. Creation probably seems like their best player, unless Cadaver is a real talent that I haven't had on my radar at all. And then who's the final player as well? Oh, Lucka, who's been around the scene for ages, but has always been kind of an inconsistent player that was
middling results.
Almost.
He's one of the guys in my mind.
But
when I was talking about Nip with the consistency, he was one of the guys for me that he would just be a beast in one game, and then the next game he just couldn't find the same form. So I feel like I would love to see Lucker step up and really succeed on this team, because I think he has the potential there.
The amount of times as well,
the
amount of times that Banks and Mitch have casted Lucker and talked about they just couldn't resist making the joke about his Jett right clicks being unlucky. They just couldn't resist it every single time. It was just a temptation for them that was too great. And I'm personally, I feel bad for Lucker being on this team and having to just be subjected to their continued jokes about how those right clicks are unlucky, Lucker.
Apple in the Garden of Eden.
It is.
They're just staring at it.
Yep.
Easy, low-hanging apple.
Yep. I don't know. I don't know. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
My feelings about this team are you've taken a bunch of players with no real perceivable results, but this team has the potential. It could be better than the sum of its parts. You know what I mean? Like, or better than the individual parts you've got involved. It could be.
It's an optimistic look.
It is optimistic because I am looking at this and I'm like, okay, I don't, especially with how competitive EU is. It's pretty difficult to like foresee them within the next 2 months, where you want to be starting to see this team really get some results, because you got to think about the timing of this as well. Yeah. It's coming right at the start of the circuit, the point system coming into effect, which I don't know how it works. But the end goal for these teams is, the Masters event to qualify for this.
There doesn't seem to be. I mean, there doesn't seem to be any chance.
What is the plan? Yeah, what is the plan? But I'm not going to write them off.
If you're a new organization coming into the scene right now, I would be looking at, if you can't make top 10, or at least you don't look like you have a chance to, then you're just in it for the long term to try and like Babby's starter roster, and you're trying to adapt as you move on. And
SUMN FC is still available, Alliance, by the way. But,
yeah, no.
So you can build your own top 15 team.
I mean, I don't know whether they'll even be top 15. It's competitive out there in Europe.
Yeah, it's super competitive.
So I don't know. I'm interested somewhat to see them play, but I'm not expecting anything from them. And I'm kind of wondering what Banks and Mitch's role is on the team and how committed they are to it, because it seems like the classic example of people who are just interested in having a job in the scene, but they're just trying to kind of get their fingers in as many pies as possible. And like they're currently trying to do broadcasting, and that seems to be their primary goal, is to make it as broadcasters within the scene. Mm-hmm. But then they have what would otherwise be full-time jobs for Alliance as GM and, well, it says analyst, but it's like a coaching role for that team as well, which
typically are roles that take a lot of your time.
Yeah, like I'm a broadcaster. I wouldn't be doing a broadcasting and a coaching role at once. You're inevitably either going to be letting down your team, or you're not going to be able to do as much broadcasting as you've previously done before. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested to see what the long-term route is. Like, do Banks and Mitch actually want to be long-term working with Alliance, or is this just a backup option where they're collecting a paycheck in case the casting doesn't work out? Like, what is happening here?
Yeah,
it's extremely weird, because although there has been a shift of broadcast talent turning into behind the scenes talent, people like
typically
Gen.G
it is a wholesale shift.
Yeah, it's a wholesale shift. You don't do it at the same time.
It's a wholesale job.
Yeah, because it's a full job. It takes up all of your time. So I am interested in that aspect of it, because at the moment they're the most prevalent casters in Europe. There are also very few casters in Europe, and they just seem to be getting all the jobs kind of by default. But
yeah, that is one of the nice things about the NA scene is that at least at the moment, though it is like the caster challenge and free labor,
it has its ups and downs.
It has its ups, which is that you find the Tanner Metros of the world, who otherwise would have probably not been in a position to commentate these qualifiers, or like Upmind and Sully, who are like, just nice young lads doing their thing, like with a load of potential coming up, and then they get a big opportunity. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of opportunities in esports generally for like a 16-year-old commentator to cast a Riot qualifier. It's big. It's cool as well, and so.
And then underneath that surface, there's 1,000 young used up caster husks that were all trying to make it through the challenge and they're just their corpses are piled up there because they're like, work for free and you'll get it.
To build up the might of the empire, the might of the corporation. Just work for free for a little bit,
Yeah.
And then you realize you're working for free for the entire
industry.
Yeah,
it is interesting though at the start of any scene to kind of see how things shake out and like where the pieces end up falling. I mean, interestingly, for a bit of a tangent too, Dust recently posted on Reddit saying that him and Vince are unable to cast the Valorant challenges, the Valorant Champions Tour, specifically these early challenge events.
They region locked the talent, right?
They've region locked the talent. So think of all the great caster duos across all of esports, basically. it's very rarely two people from the same region. It's usually a British guy and an American guy, or an Australian guy and an American guy, or something like that. Some combination of you come from different backgrounds, you have slightly different accents, you come together. That's the those are the big duos. Your Anders and Semler, your Henry and Sadakist, your Mitch and Matt from the Overwatch League. Like a lot of these classic duos come from very different areas. Well, no, we're not going to do that in Valorant.
They region locked the talent.
They region locked the talent.
Shame.
Avril has to cast Oceanic Valorant. Avril. And then Dust has to cast North America, while Vince has to cast Europe.
Dust and Vince
wild.
were good
It's
duos.
so weird.
Well,
if we wanted to cast, we would only be allowed to cast North America. Wouldn't be allowed to be on the desk for Europe. Because we live in North America.
Oh.
It's based on your residency, I think.
Okay.
Which I think the idea of it is that they don't want
everyone
let's say
trying to go to one scene.
No, I think what they don't want is like if let's use Banks and Mitch as an example, right? If Banks and Mitch were just willing to either work cheaper or work more than everybody else, and they ended up casting everything across the entirety of the scene. Or in a more, reasonable example, if the community just was in love with DDK and Sean to the point where every tournament organizer across the world wanted to use them, and then you bury all of the upcoming talent from that region because the American people are just casting everything. I think that's the thing that they're trying to solve for, but they're actually just shooting themselves in the foot even further because people like Avril, who are actually on the come up, can't cast scenes that have eyeballs on them at all.
Yeah.
Like, that's so silly.
That's sort of like you have to do it by a case-by-case basis. You don't just put a blanket ban. You sort of be like, okay, we're going to work with you to like sort of make this fair without making things crazy and super inflexible.
Yeah.
And also, what I fucking hate about this as well is that what you're going to lead to is that your Champions event at the end of 2021, you're going to have a bunch of talent that only knows their region, because they were unable to work any of the other regions. And if you are locked inside your own bubble, then you're only financially incentivized to pay attention to your own bubble. You might watch occasional top games from Europe if you're a North American caster, but you're not going to be following it like you're in the thick of it. Yeah. And so when you get to when you get to Champions or Masters, where it's the actual inter-regional events, you're not going to have experts that know all of the scenes. You're not setting up your talent for success in that manner.
Yeah. I just don't understand the thought process behind the original decision making. Is it literally I mean, what you said.
I mean,
there's a multitude of reasons, right? You could do it from like, you don't want to smother upcoming talent. You want to promote homegrown talent. You don't want one duo to take all the jobs and thus hurt the other two previous things, right? There's a whole bunch of reasons as to why. It's just more of like, there are probably more flexible solutions to solve that.
Don't you need more hands-on involvement though to make those kind of overarching decisions? Like if you're leaving up to TOs to hire talent and also run events, is it really fair to set those limitations then on the talent? Like, you're encouraging like a free market almost, but you're limiting aspects of it.
Yeah, I think it's really weird. Like, for example, if Europe has less tournaments, then Europe has less career prospects for its talent, which means that you are going to get less European talent or worse European talent because the better ones can't afford to live there.
In early Overwatch, there were no real EU tournaments, or like the EU tournaments were essentially being casted by ESL, and that was ESL employees. And me and you, some of our earliest events were casting in Australia or casting in America.
Yeah, like because those are the only jobs that you could get.
Those are the only events we could get.
Yeah.
I mean, that is having the ecosystem in NA with the tier 2 tournaments also has offered a platform for a lot of the same people I was mentioning before. Like, I think the first time saw Up-Minded Sully was like one of the 30 bomb summer cup.
Yeah.
It's like a 3K tournament. And it's like, that's where you first see some of these guys where they get a chance.
They've come by. So something we got wrong earlier in an earlier episode was the fact that Oceanic region is not limited to its own challenger circuit. It's attached to NA.
Yeah, which
we were talking about the team.
Yeah.
I can't remember which team it was. So the prospects of them trying to move over to North America. They can play in the North American tournaments. It's Oceanic and NA is together.
Yeah.
So Avril, is he locked? What? Avril can't cast NA even though the circuits are attached.
I mean, I don't know actually. I don't know. Maybe we're wrong about that as well. That could be possible that we're.
But he would be an edge case compared, like specifically, we're talking more on the Europe side. This is what's European. He would be an edge case because he's one of the guys that could theoretically do both. But that would even be more bullshit, right? And if I was a European caster and like, well, if only I was Oceanic, right? Because then I could do 2 scenes, but now I can't. I can do 1 scene, and it's objectively currently the worst scene for broadcast prospects.
Yeah,
because there's just so many less events.
Yeah, and it's a strange ruling. I just wish that big companies hired people who knew about stuff about broadcasting. It's kind of mind-blowing that big companies don't invest in talent development systems.
Yeah,
like the Overwatch League as well does not have a thoroughly built out talent development system.
Well, that's always been. I feel like broadcast at esports is always second fiddle to everything else, which is also why you see a mass exodus of broadcasters, even at the top of their field, moving away from broadcasting.
Yeah. And it's also
just a bitch to be a part of.
Yeah. It's also why, I mean, you get this weird dynamic between people crying for more diversity in broadcasting in esports, and yet people unable to name good talents that would add diversity to some broadcasts as well, because there's no talent development system. It's just fucking do it yourself and hope you make it because you're lucky or financially privileged enough to be able to spend all of the time doing it.
Yeah,
so
if you
of
don't have
course
a
that
robust
skews
system, how
towards
is anyone
white
supposed to
men.
make it, right? How are they going to do it?
Yeah.
So
literally skewed towards people who have the means to do it and exist with no income from an outside job, right? Which I mean, typically it's going to be more privileged people, right? So.
I think a massive missing step in esports at the moment is
talent development structure.
Yeah, it's talent development
kind of
structures. Is actually, if you're a caster and you apply to Riot, and Riot have people who work on the talent development side and just build up their homegrown talent.
But then you have to be incentivized to do it, right? Because it's like, well, you could do that, or you can send all the poors to fight each other in the caster challenge. And
I know.
You could do that too. That's another option.
That is a very weird way to do it. Early on in my career with Dota, I entered. So right when I was like on the cusp of either entering into Overwatch, I was casting Overwatch and Dota at the same time. Yeah. And with both those scenes in Dota, there was an organization that ran like a thing called the Casters Crucible, but it was games that have already been broadcast, so it wasn't live games. It wasn't like a tournament. I wasn't working for free, although I was casting for free. I just signed up, and it was honestly like I was thrown into a pit, and like I was getting shit lobbed at me, honestly, because their concept was, it was brutal. It was fucking brutal. You signed up, and they had a in-game chat thing, and you could vote whether or not they were good or not. So each caster was assigned an MMR. Based off of their performance.
This sounds awful. It was
alive. It was a
already.
continuous string of games, and they would if the chat vote, if you got below a certain amount of MMR, you get voted out and you're thrown into a live game. So you're thrown in and you have to just fucking start casting, and you have to be entertaining, otherwise the Twitch chat just starts lobbing shit at you and gets you out. And yeah, it was chaos. But like, even that system is better, I think, because they were just like on the hunt for prospect talent.
But wait a second. The caster challenge from NSG is pretty much the exact same thing. Because when you apply for the caster challenge and you're doing these open qualifiers, it's not NSG or Riot who picks the casters that go on to the next stage. It's a public vote.
Really?
And this public vote will also indicate who's like the least, because you will have the least votes at the end of it too, which is kind of soul-crushing for people who are trying to come up in the scene. Yeah. No feedback, no peer review, nobody who actually knows what the fuck they're doing, just the community.
Twitch chat is like the worst. They're worst at giving feedback. They're just like, I don't like this guy's voice. Fuck him. Go to the poorhouse. Like, get him out of here.
That awful system.
I mean, also, if you're just a guy who gets stuck with, like, I don't know, fucking BBG versus whoever.
Yeah.
No one's going to see you. No one's going to vote for you.
You're not going to get voted for. But if you got like, whatever, Cloud9 Immortal, like an actual game.
Is it decided by that? Like, they get assigned games? Because I was under the impression that they were just following teams that they liked.
I have not a clue, because I don't know why some of the games didn't get cast and others did.
They definitely make sure that they don't overlap. But in terms of other than that, I don't know whether it's like
interesting.
Who picks which games get broadcast. But yeah, at the end of the day, though, you can get away with not paying casters very much when the community is satisfied with poor and inexperienced casting.
Yeah.
And at the moment, it's early enough in the Valorant scene that people don't really know what good casting is. Because even some of the people that are liked are objectively quite poor at the moment at casting. Like the broadcast quality in Valorant the average is extraordinarily poor for the size of the esport. It's not extraordinarily poor for the age of the esport because it is new and you would expect it to be, still cutting its teeth. But in terms of the size of it, it's really poor. And as the viewers get to kind of experience better and better broadcasting and understand like what they want, that's how it'll slowly kind of get developed. But until that happens, the tournament organizers can just continue to keep prices down and keep the plebs fighting.
I just think it's the more we talk about this kind of system, like the arguments for it is like, oh, you're giving opportunities for up and coming casters, but at the same time, it's like, well, no. Because these people are going to be casting some games where there's going to be no eyes on. They're not receiving proper feedback. Are they actually improving?
No feedback.
It's like there's no system to help improve these actual talent that are coming up.
No.
That was a great point you made though earlier though as well. It's only a certain group of people that can even do that can afford to do that.
Yeah.
Like you're in high school.
Yeah, students. Yeah, I mean that's how I did it because I was a university student, and so I had a ton of time to be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's extraordinarily underdeveloped, that entire side of the industry, and it leads to exploitation of you're selling people on a dream and then farming them for free labor. And never giving them opportunities to improve because the system isn't there to actually give them proper feedback and improve on it. But
that's not even a Valorant unique problem. That's just same old.
That's just esports.
That's
it really
same old in esports. So
it is. It's the same stuff that happens everywhere. Yeah,
it's just more. You can see it emerging in Valorant more because it's a newer esport.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, let's get back on track talking about these teams. Last topic, at least the second last topic before the one that everybody's waiting for. But this one is an interesting one. EG coming out with the announced roster. It's a mixed roster. I am pretty ignorant of a lot of the players that are going to be on this team. I know some of them, but it's an interesting concept that EG are going with here, going for the mixed roster, and they've just come out with their announcement as well. So
yeah, this one is weird. I mean, it's strange, and the reason it's strange is because they've kind of taken like the core of Moon Raccoons, I suppose. I mean, I don't even really know whether you would call Alexander and Temperature the core of the team, but they've taken those two players, added them to Osiris, and then added two women who I've not actually seen competing in Valorant before. Like there are definitely people who are on my radar that are coming up in that sense. Like Katie, who's been filling in for Cloud9 White, for example. But and obviously a lot of the Cloud9 White players too. But then Potter, I've only ever seen recently doing CS analysis, and then suddenly, is a Valorant pro player. That was such. I was looking at this like, wait, really?
Nolan Pepper.
I mean,
she did the analysis for Flashpoint.
Yes, true. So, she did Valorant analysis as well.
But I mean, presumably she's been playing a lot.
Yeah, must have been.
Throughout the past year, I guess. And she used to be a pro in CS as well.
Yeah.
So she's definitely experienced. Yeah, it's an interesting team, and I mean it's definitely nice to see some of the Moon Raccoon guys get a good opportunity. Though there's always some part of me that only that team could have stayed together.
The Moon Raccoon nostalgia keeps coming back. I think it's a cool initiative as well, because I think they came out, their CEO, I want to say, came out, was like, we just want to be like one of the first teams to try to really champion the mixed roster in terms of like mixed gender roster. We'll have men and women playing together on the same team. So I think it's a really cool idea, right? Because C9 White's they've actually had some okay success recently as an all-women's team. I mean, they beat Renegades in an online qualifier, and they beat United in the Champions.
You got to say though that they are the exception, like in the Valorant scene. Though it's not like
for sure. For sure.
Yeah, you can't just guaranteed replicate the success of Cloud9 White in terms of popularity or success. You you have to put in the work and actually scout excellent talent. And if you want to create like a mixed gender roster as well, the guys that you're playing with have to be really good too. And this team, they've got some decent talent, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I can't
I'm interested
see
to
it being
what
as
their
successful or as popular
trajectory is,
as
right?
Cloud9
I worry
might.
if it's. Yeah, I mean, for one, I think a mixed roster is great for breaking down the barriers and already the negative attitude that
for sure.
is pervasive in terms of esports. With women as competitors. So, yeah, I absolutely applaud EG for that. But I worry that, I mean, here's the thing: people, if somebody has like a sexist mindset, this isn't going to stop them from it in the first place. So the point I was about to make was, I'm worried that this would set it back almost in a way if this team doesn't perform well. But I think I've immediately played devil's advocate to that people will just do that anyway because they're pieces of shit.
You know,
people like
it's not gonna move anything backwards. It's just the same people are gonna be backwards as were backwards.
And also, if we want to solidify mixed rosters in the future with like men and women playing together, anyways, the reality is, if you have men and women on the same team, those rosters sometimes are gonna be shit. Like they're gonna be bad. Like it's gonna happen, right? It's just gonna happen.
A lot of shitty all-men teams getting signed in NA that should probably just sign someone instead.
Oh yeah, that's unlucky. But that's just the point, right? It's like you're gonna have good rosters and bad rosters if they're mixed men and women, like no matter what, right? Like that's just how it's gonna work. So if this roster ends up being good, great. If it ends up being bad, well, I mean it is what it is. That just happens.
The other thing to add on to that too is that if the roster ends up being bad, then if this was the norm, that sometime in the future there's enough women players that they pervade the top end of the scene, and it's just a norm to have very normal mixed gender rosters. Sometimes you'll end up cutting the men in order to make the roster better. Sometimes you'll end up cutting the women in order to make the roster better. Yeah. And you might end up transitioning one way or the other, just depending on the skill and based on the merits of the players involved. So that's, the future of EG might end up going in a totally different direction just based off the success that they have in the short term. It's hard to tell how good this roster is going to be at all because I don't know how good Potter and Claudia are going to be.
Yeah.
Like I haven't seen them play.
Yeah, there's just not a lot out there. So yeah, just have to give them time. I mean, what was their? Could you pull up the stats again against Serenity, Kurt? Because they took a map off them, right?
No, they didn't take a map.
No. Or it was 0-2. Okay.
They had a close split. Yeah. But they did not take a map.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, this roster is mega new because Moon Raccoons just played a tournament a couple weeks ago. So this is a super new team. Give them some time. I mean, yeah, it's a cool initiative and it's needed for the future of esports. Yeah. And it's cool that Valorant is evidently the game where where organizations are interested in pushing the barriers down in esports as well. Yeah. So it is cool. And I hope that I wish the team the best. I hope they do well. Yeah. I mean, we just have to give them. It's just a team. We have to give them time and see where they'll end.
See how it plays out.
So I feel like success for them would be measured very similarly to C9 White, where you want them to be punching against tier 2 teams. Like you want them to be in the pack as pretty solid tier 2 teams, and that is success for at least the short term. And then you want them to build kind of from there. Yeah. And I think you could see that kind of result from that team where they're kind of punching around the bottom level of the tier 2, where they occasionally get upset results over like Serenity or a BBG, or I mean even an upset over BBG would actually be massive.
Considering that they were close to taking a map here and they didn't really get blown out, and this was their first showing ever, and the team is brand new, I feel like there's still plenty of room potentially for this squad to grow, right? Like I don't even think we have to limit it to that, but it's we'll just have to see. We actually just have no idea. We'll just have no idea because the roster is so new.
Yeah. The Serenity team is good too. Keep in mind, they took a map off Sentinels right after this. Yeah. This new Serenity team is good. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. You just got to give them some time.
See how it plays out.
Happy for old Nolan Pepper doing this thing. Yeah. But I mean, I guess I don't think it's on the topic list. But yeah, C9 White did have they've had some good results lately. The BO3 win over E United. They have been
before that.
I still think that they actually have mega potential. There is some ridiculous talent on the team and a lot of fucking drive too. Yeah. They are really dedicated.
I was a little bit worried because early on in the team's inception they were doing well against tier 2 teams, and then there was a bit of a dip in performance. Somewhere around from, I can't remember the exact timeline, but
It's like late first strike.
yeah, essentially from when their inception into now, there was a dip somewhere in the middle. But it seems like they are back on the way up, at least as a team, and you can tell, like you said, they're driven. So it's
they have a lot to improve on as well. I was watching one of their VODs, and they strategically are still lacking in a lot of areas, even though they're individually pretty good. And that to me just indicates potential to improve. And to actually
I
get
think
good.
if you take that team in the right direction, they could be really good.
Right.
I mean, they're good now, but
Final topic.
Mm-hmm.
You ready?
Who, me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Wyatt's Weekly Award.
I don't even. I don't remember this one.
This is exceptionally awkward.
Oh shit! I don't even remember recording that. I guess that must have been an outtake. I don't remember that.
There it is up there.
You faked me out so hard with this earlier today because we were waiting. I'm like, I get here once again as a tradition. I'm here first with Kurt. No one else is here. As a tradition. As a tradition with Plat Chat VALORANT. And then I hear Wyatt's voice like echoing down through the house. I'm like, oh, finally, the slob is up, huh? This little guy that's so late to all the recordings. He's always quaffing his hair. But no, it was the Wyatt's Weekly Award. Just be the audio playing through here. And so I got totally faked out earlier. I looked like a fool.
Yeah, there's no audio in that one.
Who are you giving it to this week, then? Huh?
Am I giving it to this week? Giving it to someone who I think he deserves it.
Oh.
He might have deserved it for a long time, honestly. Could have won it once, maybe twice before. I'm giving it to Packing 10 this week.
Ooh.
Which is, I mean, that's pretty deserved, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's pretty deserved. Has to be, at the moment, the best coach / scout in Valorant right now.
Mm-hmm.
No?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't think of...
In combination with Gumba.
Combination with Gumba as well. But the work that they've done for Immortals since the dawn of Valorant, and again, this is the third time now that they have successfully scouted for this team. It's just all wins.
Yep.
I mean, they've just done an excellent job with this team. Time and time again. They've done it again. They scouted one of the better teams with mega talent in Tier 2, SOAR. They got two of the excellent players from that team, integrated them into the roster. They win the first qualifier. I mean, what more can you say?
Yeah.
They've scouted.
And he was doing this while splitting. Not anymore, mind you, but used to. He was splitting head coaching duties and building a roster in Overwatch at the same time while doing all this in Valorant.
Yeah.
He
should be even better.
He's not.
Yeah,
now he's not.
All of his time
He's
is
not
for
having to split
Valorant.
that time anymore. But
Yeah.
no.
But genuinely, I love to see thoughtful teams in early esports. It always drives me crazy when teams just dive in head first into just a pile of nonsense, and then they're just trying to pick it apart for months, and then they eventually just end up resetting. They have been thorough since the beginning of the game, which I feel should be the norm for esports and new esports.
Yeah.
There needs to be better player scouting and better coaching from the jump, and you can see the fucking benefits. You can see how much success that team has had in Valorant up to this point in terms of the player transactions, the economics of it, the parking lot full of fucking Bugattis and Ferraris. And then also now reaching this point where they have a legit great team again. And this team looks like, at least so far, it could have the potential to be maybe the best iteration of Immortals yet. If they can continue what they've done in this first qualifier.
Which is wild considering they had Asuna and Dicey, who are now on 100 Thieves. Yeah.
And then early
to be
on
fair,
with
they did have a head start though,
one.
Wyatt. Like, you want teams to be better, sure, I agree with all that. But very few organizations had a head coach and coaching staff on lock that was like ready to start building rosters effectively. Like Immortals kind of got like, they actually just got really lucky in some respects with having these guys already under the organizational umbrella.
Sure.
Ready to build their
so other
roster.
Organizations should make it not lucky.
Yeah, I think the key there is
just look for good scouts and coaches.
And it's not just orgs that can learn from this as well, though. It's other coaches around the scene too. Is that the drive and focus to be excellent from Packington and Gumber is incredible. Like, they are going to put in 110% all the time, driven to do the best for their team, and they're going to infect their players as well with that same kind of drive. And that is lacking from a lot of coaches, where they just have a bit of like, I'm just trying to put my players in the best position possible. You know, I'm not going to force them to play certain agents or whatever. We're just going to, you know, try and feel it out or whatever. No, get out the belt, make them do what you want them to do.
Yeah. And if something goes wrong, you're going to sit on the bench. How did you put it, Avast? Like, you go on the bench, you remind them that they are but a speck.
It was, you remind them that they're just a cosmic speck of dust in the grander universe, right? And that entropy will always win in the end, and the coach is always going to last longer than you in that entropy, right? Like, you're always going to decay faster than a radioactive isotope as a player in this stage of the game. Exactly. So it's just that's what's going to happen.
I think it's important that organizations empower coaches, and I think it's really important that, especially in the young stages of a scene, that coaches have even more drive than players to learn the game. Because you have to get to a point where you feel comfortable with the authority, and not just the authority, but the responsibility of making decisions for the team.
So many coaches, that's not the case.
Yes, that's why I respect Sliggy as well, because he tells his team to do things. He takes authority and also accountability for those decisions that are made in the game.
It's not the kind of authority that's going to make your team hate you later down the line. You know what I mean? It's like it comes off the back of knowledge and research and his own personal development. Like he's not insecure about his understanding of the game, and as a result, his authority doesn't come off as fake or forced. In a coaching environment. I know so many coaches where that is not the case, because they lack the work ethic involved to get to that point.
And it's those coaches though as well, the ones who do they vocalize what they want out of the team, and they make it happen. Those are the coaches that we actually talk about, that are known, that are, you know, like, we know of Packington and Gumbo, we know of Sliggy. These are, you know what I mean? Like, there are so many teams in the scene where we go like, do they have a coach? It's like, oh, they do. Okay. I mean, you just don't know.
I'm sure there's some people doing decent jobs behind the scenes that we are unaware of, but as a general rule, it seems like a lot of the organizations come from CS and have retained the CS culture of a coach just being supplemental rather than the driving force of success. And coming from Overwatch and seeing how useful it is to have a staff that works as hard as the players and drives the players in the right direction, you're just almost guaranteed more success when you take that approach. You're going to have consistency, and it relieves responsibility from the players to do that kind of stuff too. I also have a lot of respect for people like Boaster, who essentially are doing both jobs right now. Boaster's like the coach and the IGL of the team, and he's putting in all of the incredible work behind the scenes that a coach would do, and then also coming in and telling his players and directing them when they're inside of the game as well.
And that is, I mean, that's just different. That is just different.
Just built differently. Built differently.
That is the genuine love and commitment for what you're doing. If you are not genuinely just invested and in love with what you're doing, you can't do that.
That's not happening.
It is different. No paycheck can make you care like that when you're he's making his pancakes and he's just grinding all day. That's built different.
I got to put an end to this episode.
Okay.
We've been going for 3 hours, over 3 hours and 10 minutes.
Really? That is extraordinary.
Okay.
Oh God.
We're not stopping. We're keeping it going. What's next?
We still haven't talked about
Plat.
We haven't covered the Chinese scene that's been developing, so let's start it. No, I'm joking. Thanks for watching Plat Chat episode 30 of Plat Chat Valorant. Leave a comment if you made it to this point saying, wow, can't believe the ending. You know, something along those lines. Really make people watch all 3 hours of it, so we build up enough ad revenue to eventually sign SUMN FC. That's the end goal, essentially. That will be the end goal. But yeah, follow the Twitter as well, as you can see, Plat Chat Podcast. You can catch up on everything that we're tweeting, and we will see you shortly, soon, maybe in like 2 days time if you're watching this on the day that it's being uploaded, for back chat. I think that gets uploaded on Wednesdays. So yeah, back chat with Sliggy, as I teased at the start of the episode. We'll see you then.